Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to yet another session brought to you by Azim Premji University. I'm Shashwat DC, part of the communications team, and I welcome you all to a session which is part of the broader Rivers of Life festival that we are running at the Azim Premji University. Technically, we are today in the 15th day of our festival, in many ways, this session is kind of the penultimate session for this whole festival that we have put together. Thousands of school students, college students have been at our campus. So many people across the country and abroad have joined in terms of sharing their work, their research, their movies, their music. So this festival has been a very a microcosm of the kind of diversity that we have at in our country and abroad, and the kind of people that are working towards conservation issues specifically related to water and rivers. So to kind of to take it to its logical conclusion, we have a very interesting session today, that talks about bringing rivers back into our collective consciousness. So over the next hour and a half or two, we will be having these discussions with very interesting people who will be presenting their work to us. We will first listen to them, and then possibly we will do a small Q&A talking about various aspects related to their talk they have given. Just one request to all our viewers, and to all those who are sitting in at the seminar hall. If you have any questions or queries, you can just type in to the live chat box. If time permits, we will definitely kind of take that up. So without much ado, let me just first and foremost welcome our first guest for the afternoon today, which is Mr. Manoj Misra. He's a former Indian Forest Service cadre from MP in Chhattisgarh. Since 2007, he has been a convener of Yamuna Jiye Abhiyaan, which actually translates to Living Yamuna campaign. This is a civil society campaign for revival of rivers in India. He's also on the steering committee of India Rivers Forum and the Water Conflicts Forum. So with that, Manoji, I would like to cede stage to you, and look forward to hearing your views on how we can save our rivers, specifically Yamuna.
Thank you, Shashwatji, for this introduction. And actually, I'm grateful to you and the university for making me part of this wonderful festival, Rivers of Life. Indeed, I wish all our rivers were in such a wonderful state that we could celebrate them, because rivers are meant to be celebrated. And humanity, since time immemorial, has endeavored to be close to their rivers and actually enjoy their company. But unfortunately, at the moment, our rivers are in trouble. And so I would be speaking about how and why and what could be a way forward. So please, my PPT, yeah. So now this question, can we revive our rivers? It's a, you see, it is a challenge. It challenges our very existence, that today we are in a state where we have to speak in terms of reviving or helping revive a natural ecosystem, and an ecosystem like a river. Uh, Now, in India, it was way back in early 1980s when we actually when we realized as a nation that our rivers were in trouble and something had to be done. And so in 1985, for the first time, revival efforts for River Ganga started. And Uh, since then, there have been efforts not just for Ganga but also for Yamuna and many other rivers in the country. As you can see, there has been a Ganga action plan and it still continues since 1985. There has been Yamuna action plan since 1994. There was a National Ganga River Basin Authority, then the National Mission for Clean Ganga. And finally, in 2016, we have the Namami Gange. So, all these years, more than 40 years, we have been trying to somehow get our at least river Ganga, which we have also termed as national river, uh, to revive. But the stark fact is that we are nowhere near to reviving it or any other river for that matter. As we understand, this has been because we have started on a wrong foot. Because it was the Pollution Control Board which were asked to frame the and design a program project for the revival of our rivers, and that is where we faulted. When the initial committees and when the initial planning took place, there were there were no river ecologists, people who really understood rivers, part of that team. And so it remained a pollution focused exercise because that was the job of pollution control boards. And unfortunately, even till today, it remains a pollution control exercise. And as we understand, that is the crux, that is the problem where we have not made much headway. So yes, we can revive our rivers if we really try hard enough, and if it has an ecological basis. Now, river revival is today a priority world over. You see, this festival is very interestingly timed. It is actually happening parallelly to a international conference taking place in Egypt, which is the United Nations Framework Conference on Climate Change from 6th to 18th November. And this is the 27th time that the world is meeting to somehow understand and ensure that the manner in which the earth has become sick, and it is becoming sicker, or it is the earth has actually got fever, it is feverish, and it is getting more and more feverish by the day. And if the earth is sick, obviously all of us are bound to be sick sooner or later. So it's all this conference, even this celebration of rivers, is basically a very selfish act on our part. We want to save ourselves, and for that we want to save our rivers and save earth. And the fact is that climate change is just a symptom. Global warming is just a symptom. It is kind of end result or a product of so many different things that we have done over all these decades. And the problem is that earth is sick because most of the e- ecosystems, the natural ecosystems on earth are sick. They have gone sick because of the different activities that we as humans have committed. And river is one of the most important such natural ecosystem. And as we know that all ecosystems are interconnected, interrelated. So if one of them gets sick, earth will certainly get sick. So that's where we are coming from. Now, the other thing that I want to highlight is that this is something we have forgotten, but this is a truth. And our forefathers knew this and they practiced this. They knew that there is hardly any difference between us and the rivers. We are literally and figuratively the same, river and us. I will not go much deeper into this. You can read, but you see, there are very strong similarities between we take birth, we grow, we fulfill certain roles and functions in life, and we die. But to be born again, that's our our belief, and this is exactly what applies to a river. We have a physical body, and river too has a physical body. Figuratively, we have what we because we carry enriched water within our system, which we call as blood. And the rivers also carry enriched water from their source to the sea, where they die. And then there is a cycle again. So, just like we have this circulatory system within us, where the blood actually takes nutrition, everything to every cell of our body, similarly, the river has a body. And the river body is its basin. It's not just the single main stem that we often mistake a river with, but it's the basin which is the body. And I will come more in detail about it a little later. And then, we host millions of organisms within us, and so do rivers. And there are several other similarities. I don't have time to actually get into that here. The only point I'm trying to make is let's be clear that there is little difference between us and rivers. And this picture actually sums up this entire thing beautifully. See, here is the Ganga, the Yamuna basin. This is their body. And here is us. So, see the similarities. Now, I am part of a forum which is called as India River Forum, which was started in 2014. And this is actually a platform which is co-hosted by 9 different NGOs currently in different parts of the country. And we have a annual event which is called as India Rivers Week that we hold in the last week of November every year. This year again we are holding one which is focused on inland waterways and their impacts on rivers of India. But in 2016, the theme of India River Week was the state of India's rivers. And India being vast and so many rivers and all that. So just few of us sitting here and there could not have done this job to make this assessment. So what we did, we requested river experts in different states of the nation, and we asked them to really assess their state's rivers and then come out with some kind of an assessment, which is how many rivers are healthy, how many are sick, and how many are dying in their respective states. And this was a process over almost 3-4 months. And we, although because different people had their different methodologies, but they did come out with this assessment. And finally, when we actually came out with the result, we found that out of the 290 different rivers which were assessed by different people, 205 were found to be dying, red, 70%. So in 2016, and it's such an unfortunate fact that in 2016, about 70% of our rivers were dying. And since then, things have only gone from bad to worse. It's only in few rivers in northeast and other hilly areas which could be said that which could be determined to be healthy. Otherwise, most of the rivers were either dying or they were sick. So against this backdrop, let us talk in terms of what constitute a healthy river. You see, because when I say a river and us are the same thing, then for us, health is the most important aspect. And similarly, that is true for any ecosystem. And uh, it's understood well world over that a healthy river must have freedom to flow, because it's the flow is the basis of a river. Something that doesn't flow cannot be called as a river. And second is that a healthy river must have freedom to flood. Now, to some of you, this might come as a surprise, because unfortunately, currently, floods mean devastation for us. And so, when I say that a healthy river must have freedom to flood, it might arise as a question mark. But I will explain this. And then, thirdly, our river in its entirety is, is as healthy as its sickest tributary. Just like, there is a saying that a chain is as strong as its weakest link. Similarly, a river is as healthy as its sickest tributary. And this is true of the earth. Earth will be as healthy as its sickest ecosystem. So these are in a different scale. This is how it actually. And then I will explain this, because most of our rivers today are unfortunately captive. We have made them captive to meet our own ends. But once a river becomes captive, it becomes devastating. And how? I will tell you. Now, let's take the example of River Ganga. I started with this, and let me just. Now, this is the body Ganga. It's about it is spread over 1 million square kilometers. Over large part of it is in India, some in Nepal, and in Bangladesh. So when we say River Ganga, this is what is River Ganga. River Ganga is not just this. Normally, which is understood, that 2,500 kilometer long main stem, and that's what we talk about. And this is what we have been trying to revive all these years. Just the 200, 500 kilometer long main stem. But that's not River Ganga. That's not body Ganga. The body Ganga is all this. And until unless all these tributaries are equally restored, revived, rejuvenated, River Ganga will not be rejuvenated. Because this main stem Ganga is just the end result of all that happens in this basin, good or bad. So when we think and when we plan for the restoration, rejuvenation, revival of body Ganga, just like us, I'm not just the circulatory system within me, I'm not just the blood in me. I am this entire flesh body, and any part of my this body can go sick. So if I focus only on my blood, I cannot remain healthy. So that's as much true of the of body river, body Ganga. And we all know that almost 400 million people reside within this basin. They, they are dependent on the this basin remaining healthy. Now, there was a study which was carried out, uh, commissioned by the World Bank. This was not really a hands-on on the ground study, but a modeling study, uh, because the flow data of Ganga system is actually classified. I'll not go deeper into this statement, but that's the fact. So they did a modeling study and they found that over a 30-year period, which is 1975 to 2005, and now we are in 2022, so things would have further gone bad. Over a 30 years period, Ganga had lost 57% of its original flow at Ganga Sagar, where Ganga meets the Bay of Bengal, the sea. Now, where did this flow go? Now, there are only two ways that the flow can disappear. Either there is a drastic reduction in the precipitation in the entire basin, uh, which is rainfall and snowfall, which is not true because it has. Uh, this is not fact, or there has been a drastic diversion of the flow somewhere in both monsoonal and non-monsoonal period. And the fact is, how that diversion has taken place is this. These are all almost 1,000 structures which we have created, and majority of them have been created post independence. So we, independent India, has created these 1,000 pricks and cuts in the body Ganga. And if we have a single blood clot within our system, we could die, or we could suffer a stroke, and the stroke could kill us, or it could leave us crippled. So today, just because of what we have done, body Ganga is crippled. All these structures have diverted all that flow into different areas. So it is all that flow which the tributaries were trying to bring to Ganga has been diverted. So Ganga has lost all that flow. Now I will show you a few pictures from river Yamuna, just to highlight why flow is so very important for our rivers and their revival. These are some Yamuna facts from Delhi. Till 1950s, drinking water for South Delhi was directly taken from the river at Okla. One can't even imagine to do that today. And this is 1950s, it is not hundreds or 200 years back. There were sailing regattas were taking place in Okla. Swimming competitions used to take place in the river, in the city. And then it was very rich as far as biodiversity is concerned. So today, when we talk in terms of revival, we have to set few uh, few benchmarks, indicators of success. How would we know that revival has taken place? And these are all indicators of success for a revived Yamuna in Delhi. Now let's take a trip down the river Yamuna. This is Bandarpunch Glacier. This is the origin of Yamuna. There is a Saptrishi Kund where it originates, way up in Uttarakhand. And this is the famous Yamunotri Dham, one of the four dhams in Uttarakhand, where and you can see the Yamuna actually coming from the Saptrishi Kund and then flowing by this dham. This is 40 kilometers downstream of Yamunotri, a village called as Kharadi. And you can you can enjoy the river Yamuna in all its glory. It's beautiful. But let's look at Yamuna Basin. You know, this green is the Yamuna Basin. In Uttarakhand, it has got a very small basin. Actually, this is a very interesting and different and unique basin. Normally, for a river basin, it is the other way around. In the at the origin, you have too many tributaries bringing water, and then we have a main stem. Here it is the other way around. The founder basin is very small, and then for a long distance there is hardly any tributary. And then we have lots of these tributaries from Madhya Pradesh joining the river. Before this river joins Ganga here at Prayagraj, Allahabad. So, while planning for this river, we should have been very careful, at least during this stretch, that if we actually interfere with the system, things are going to go really very, very bad, because there is hardly any tributary to revive it. But at this point, I'll show you what has happened. Just after 172 kilometers, as soon as the river enters the plains, we have done something. We have created a barrage at a place called as Harini Kund. And the river, for all practical purposes, finishes there. From this barrage, Western Yamuna Canal takes away almost 80% of the water of the river. Eastern Yamuna Canal takes away almost the remaining 20%. And downstream, there is hardly anything left. It's only during the monsoon, when so much water comes that this barrage is unable to hold it, that you find lots of water here downstream. Now the result is this. Downstream of Harini Kund in Karnal, in Haryana, this is the state of river in June. This is the state of river in Panipat further downstream. This is the state of the river further downstream, Sonipat. Hardly, there is nothing. But then when we come to Delhi, this is what the river is. This is our doing. Now, can we think of taking water away from this directly for drinking purposes? And this is the national capital. Imagine. And this represents almost every river system today in the country. And this is our biggest challenge. If we cannot revive our lifeline river in the national capital, how can we anywhere else? Now we go further downstream, and that this is the tourist capital of India, Agra. And we have already covered uh, entire Braj area, Mathura, Vrindavan, and all that. And you can see Taj Mahal here and the state of Yamuna in Agra. But, and it's no great quiz to find out which is Yamuna and which is Chambal. Here, Yamuna is meeting Chambal. I don't have to explain where is Yamuna and where is Chambal. And even the birds know that. Birds are frequenting only Chambal and not Yamuna. But henceforth, after this, which is a village called as Bhare, Yamuna all of a sudden revives itself, thanks to Chambal. And when we reach a place called as Pachnada, Pachnada means a place where 5 rivers meet. Yamuna, Chambal, Sindh, Kuwari, and Pahuj. You can see a pristine river Yamuna. And further downstream in Prayagraj, in Allahabad, this is the Yamuna, same river which you find in such a sickly state in Delhi is much bigger as a river when it meets Ganga. Ganga is much smaller as compared to Yamuna. So this actually highlights how flow, just the flow is so very important for the revival of our river systems. Now, coming to this, why should rivers have freedom to flood? You know, what is a flood after all? Flood is as natural during the monsoon season as cold wave during winter and as a heat wave during summer. Summer temperatures rise, we get heat wave. Winter temperature falls, we get cold wave. Monsoon, we have high rainfall, we have flood wave. It's as natural, as simple as this. And floods were always part of river systems across the globe, more so in monsoonal regions of the world, India in particular. We have flood waves. We don't have single floods. We have smaller floods, then floods sometimes, and flood is a cyclic process. So we have decadal floods, we have 50-year floods, we have 100-year floods, 500-year floods, 1,000-year floods. So flood is a very natural phenomenon. And for a healthy river, that's an integral part of a healthy river system. But in our folly, we have converted every flood today into a devastating event. And it is sitting in our mind now that flood means devastation. It never did previously. Now, because it is the floods that ensure the perennial nature of our rivers. You know, we can say in the Himalayas we have the glaciers, and glaciers are necessary for are actually behind perennial nature of Ganga or Yamuna. But what about peninsular area? There are no glaciers there, and still we have perennial rivers in peninsular India. This is because of our rivers were free to flood. Because during the flood, when so much water comes, it is these floods that actually feed the aquifers. The groundwater recharges the groundwater. And when the monsoon season is over, it is these aquifers which maintain the base flows in our river and maintain the perennial nature So it's an exchange. During flood, I will fill you, and when the monsoon is over, you please help me. So it's a what we call as the influent action and the effluent action between the rivers and the aquifers. And these aquifers, mind you, go as long as 50, 100 kilometers on either side, depending on the size of the river at that place. So, this system, which unfortunately is not visible and so not much appreciated by us, is the is why floods are so necessary. But now, even in the monsoon season, what we have done, I have shown you with the Ganga system. All the structures that we have created, all the low level floods are now sitting behind the structures. And the high flood, when it comes and the structures are unable to hold it, all of a sudden that water is released, and then the intensity with which those water actually run to the sea, there is no time for them to fill the aquifers. So the aquifers remain thirsty, hungry, and of course they cannot then help the rivers get their base flows back. That is one. The second is we have embanked. You go to Bihar, almost every river has got bund either side. In the olden times, when the river were actually in flood, they were they were pregnant with silt. Those flood waters were pregnant with silt. They used to flow slowly and spread and then recharge the aquifers. And so there was never any shortage of groundwater. But today it is happening in the Indo-Gangetic plain. We are having shortage of groundwater because today either the floods are standing behind the dams or the embankments are not allowing those water to spread and recharge the aquifers and the ground. Then, in the non-monsoon season, if all that what I have described was not enough, now we are further taking away we are further emptying the aquifers through sand and boulder mining, then excessive extraction of groundwater from within the floodplains, and the conversion and destruction of floodplains. When we call something as floodplain, it means that land is part of the river system, because that is the land which goes under water during floods. So that is then integral part of the river system. A river is not just the channel where the water is flowing at some point of time. It is that channel as well as the floodplains. That is what constitute a river system. And as I said, the body river is the entire basin. But the question arises, and this is a very valid question: what about our essential water and energy needs, which we think dams meet? The fact is this: it's a fallacy. It's a fallacy which has been created over systematically by vested interests without appreciating the true water economy of this nation. You see, India was, is, and will always be a groundwater nation. Even today, almost 70% of our irrigation is from groundwater. Almost 80% of our rural water needs and 50% of urban water needs is from groundwater. 90% of industrial water is from groundwater. Our national water lifeline is groundwater. It was never surface water. But in trying to ape the West, whose river systems are very different from our river systems, and they ruled over us. So our entire engineering education is actually what they created. We actually lost this understanding that we are a groundwater nation. So we should have invested on our groundwater, but we invested on developing our surface water system through dams. But killed our rivers, killed the association of our rivers with their aquifers, uh, pauperized our groundwater systems, and here we are, facing water crisis year after year, or facing floods year after year. And as far as energy security is concerned, nowadays at least, solar and wind technology has developed enough that if we can have efficient storage systems, which everybody is now working on, there is no need of any energy from dam systems. So, what should we doing actually to bring our rivers back into healthy state? That should be our grammar. Let's not talk in terms of revival or rejuvenation or whatever. Let's talk only in terms of health, whether our systems are healthy or not, just like us. We should be doing many things, but you see, we were lucky in some sense, although very, very unlucky from the COVID. We have strong learnings from COVID to take. Because during the lockdown, when we were all hiding behind closed doors in our homes, nature was coming back into its own. It was finding itself. And that's what Yamuna in Delhi did. Imagine, on 3rd and 4th of April in Delhi, such pictures, videos were all over. Imagine this is can I, at least in my lifetime, I did not believe that I would ever see a Yamuna of this kind in Delhi. But I did. What had happened? All human activity had come to a standstill, which means all the industries were had stopped. So there was no industrial pollution entering our river systems. And to good fate of Yamuna, there were western disturbances happening in the catchment in Uttarakhand. There was good rainfall in the Yamuna catchment in later March, and there was no need of water actually, no need to divert water because we were all sitting within our homes. So all that water actually it came into the river. So we had good flow and we had zero industrial pollution and the river came back. So Yamuna has spoken. Even Ganga also in parts also did like this. Yamuna spoke and told us what we need for our rivers. Zero industrial pollution, because you know this has happened when our sewage was still entering the river. Our sewage had not been taken away because we were producing sewage still from our homes. So the sewage was still in it, but there was no industrial pollutant and there was good flow. So this is a very strong message that Yamuna gave to us. Now, as we understand, as a short term measure for revival of our rivers, these are three things that we can do everywhere. We can do it. One is ensure flow, ensure our rivers are free to flood. When I say flow, I'm talking of a thumb rule, a 70-30 thumb rule, because we have created dependence on our rivers, which cannot be taken away overnight. So the thumb rule is that at any point of time and at any place in the river system, 70% of the river's virgin flow should be in the river, and only 30% you can take away. So if you divert 30% of the river water, the river will still remain healthy. This is kind of a thumb rule, and this applies across the board. So now we don't have to really go into formulas and a lot of work to actually determine what should be the E flow for this river or that flow. Just follow this thumb rule. And if there is a river which is really overburdened, we can go this little bit lower to 60-40. Worst case scenario 50-50. अरे भाई जब बांटते हो तो कम से कम 50-50 तो करो. Today it is not even 10-90. अभी तो 10 यहाँ है और 90 यहाँ है. That's the state. So this is something that we need to really decide on a national level, and this is possible despite all our structures. This is very much possible. Then this is very much doable, and this must be put into effect. All our industrial activity, it should be zero liquid discharge. They should not be permitted to put out any liquid discharge outside. They can recycle whatever they want to do, but no. And the third thing that we have been focusing on all these years since 1985, which is sewage treatment infrastructure. Do it by all means, but do it as part of the urban challenge of urbanization. Don't do it in the name of cleaning our rivers. You see, a healthy river is a clean river. So don't try just for clean river. Try for a healthy river. And without these two, you cannot have a healthy river. And in a long-term measure, focus on the body, focus on the basin, and you can revive rivers only stream by stream, because we have killed them stream by stream. We have killed every tributary, and that is how the main stem has been killed. It is not the other way around. So we'll have to rejuvenate, revive every tributary, and the main stem will automatically get revived. This is fortunately something of this kind is being tried now with river Tampraparni in Tirunelveli district by Atri, another in Bengaluru. Then invest primarily on groundwater. Invest in aquifer mapping, groundwater recharge systems, and do it on a mission mode. Our groundwater can meet all our water needs. Really. Then we have to protect our rivers legally. Today there is no legal protection for our rivers. We have laws for almost everything in the country. The British created a River Conservation Act in 1884, for God's sake, and we have forgotten it. They created conservator for rivers legally, but there are none today. We have conservator of forest. I was myself a conservator of forest, but we have no conservator of rivers. So all of you, please become conservator of rivers. That's what we need today. Finally, please do not forget that I am a river, you are a river. So anything that we do to revive our rivers is actually a very selfish act. I'm trying to revive my own self. I'm trying to help my own self. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Manojji. This was very interesting, I must say. The whole idea of I am river and river is me kind of a thing, and the broader idea the first time your idea of floods are not to be they are a natural process, and we should not be kind of being scared and wary of them. Just like everyone, if I remember the book by P. Sainath, everyone loves a good drought. uh, we should also welcome a good flood in that sense, as long as the devastation is controlled. We are very short of time, and Dr. Tarun Chabra is also here. But before I bring him in, there were quick one two things that I just wanted to pose to you. One is, you spoke about how these rivers are in a very bad state all across Indian, and various rivers are in dying phases, as your research has shown out. This whole grand idea of interlinkages of rivers, the idea of when a river is in a state, excess water can flow to others, and this whole idea, what do you feel about the validity of such an idea, and where do you see this going forth?
You see, this would be the worst folly that this nation can commit if ever this gets realized. Because this whole concept, interlinking of rivers, who are we to interlink river? God has interlinked rivers, whatever were to be interlinked. You see, this is just a very fascinating terminology. There is no interlinking actually which will happen. There's only dam, canal, which will be done. 3,500 dams are planned to be constructed more in the name of interlinking of rivers. Imagine. We already have 5,500 dams in this country. 3,500 more dams. And I have just showed you how dams are empty our rivers at least. So this is not, firstly, please de-abuse your mind that any interlinking will happen. No, it will only, dams will be constructed and canals will be laid. That's one. Second is, the basis of this entire concept is highly unscientific and unrealistic. Now, if we want to be unscientific, by all means, but whenever we have tried to be unscientific, we have suffered. Why it is unscientific? They say any water in the river, especially during floods, flowing into the sea, is waste. That's the common uh, uh, excuse. Now, you're all science students. You see, the river is like a artery veins of this earth. Its primary aim is to carry the runoff to the sea, so that the grand water cycle then continues. Now, how can any scientific person ever talk in terms of saying that river water reaching the sea is a waste? It's totally, thoroughly unscientific. Secondly, they say, okay, some part of India flooding, other part of India not flooding, some basins being surplus, some basins being a deficit. So, if we shift water from one surplus basin to another deficit basin, win win. On paper, it is win win. But again, it's highly unscientific and unrealistic. And it is a total nonsense. You know, what is the maximum? that a canal can divert. Maximum that a canal can divert is 20,000 cusac, 30,000 cusac, 40,000 cusac, the best of canals. Do you know when our rivers flood, how much cusac actually comes down? It is in lakhs of cusacs. How can you divert lakhs of cusacs through any structure like a canal? It's a total nonsense. It is totally unrealistic. Thirdly, this whole concept of saying surplus basin and a deficit basin is again a fallacy. It is a engineer's construct. There is no basin called as surplus basin, no basin called as deficit basin. It is the geography of that basin, it is the size of that basin which determines whether you have lot of water in the basin or you have not enough water, not so much water in the basin. And accordingly, the people inhabiting those basins have devised over centuries their lifestyles, their food patterns, their crops, their homes, their everything has been attuned to the amount of water which is available in those basins. So, why should we try to change this natural system which has happened over? One is we cannot succeed in this. Second is why should we try at all? And if at all water has to be transferred from one part of the country to another part, it's already happening. Virtually, we are already transferring water from, say, Punjab to, to some other part of the country through food. So, if water has to be transferred, it can be, and it is being transferred virtually in form of products, in form of food crops. It is happening, and we can do it today. Why should the entire nation every? Because whenever there has been canal systems, wherever we have taken them, what has happened? We have made the cropping patterns uniform. Why should the entire country be growing just sugarcane, rice, wheat, and all that? Wherever there is good water, grow these crops. Wherever there is not, grow millets, grow other things. Have security, you see, have the security of returns for the farmer for all the crops. Why should it be only for wheat and rice and few such crops? Support price for all our crops should be there, so that whatever is the appropriate crop in my land, I should grow that and I should get the returns. Today it is just
Okay.
okay. We want to Punjab farmer had become rich, so the rest of the farmers should become rich. Yes, they should become rich, but have minimum support price for all crops, and you will have all the farmers will be rich, and let them then transfer crops.
Yeah. So
Sorry,
Manoji, I know we are Dr. Chabra is waiting. But before I let him in, just please bear with me, Dr. Chabra. Nidhi Paliwal has also asked a question on the she has on the live chat. There's something which was there in my mind as well when you were showing all the Yamuna in the olden time in the 50s, where there were boatings and swimming, and people could have recreational thing. They could do a lot of things around the river itself. So her question is very interesting. Nidhi says, so I'll just put it on. Yeah. So she says, in present times, there's a disconnect between our river system and humans. How would you suggest we can get the connection between humans and the rivers back?
you see, this is a question that has been a lot of people who have interacted with us, who have come, youngsters especially. How do I reconnect to my river? You see, the way we reconnected to our river. Speak to them. Go close to them. Even if they may be in a very sad state, but be beside them. They will speak to you. They will tell you how to reconnect. Yamuna told us. So I don't have a ready-made answer to this question. But and don't go after big rivers, main stem rivers. Wherever your closest stream, it may be a nala today, is part of the larger basin. Just go to that nala, please. Walk beside that nala, and that nala will start speaking to you. It will give you, truly, I tell you, it speaks to you. It will tell you the insights that you are searching. I don't have any ready made answers. But that is what each one of us, let's take this pledge that I am a river conservator. And as a river conservator, I want to do something. But what is that something? I will go to my nearest stream, whichever it may be, and I will walk beside that stream. First day, there will be no communication because the stream is suspect of me. But when the stream finds that I am coming again and again and again, the stream will start to talk to me. The stream will come into a conversation with me. And then a dialogue will get established. And then the reconnect will happen. Each one of us, every one of you, whoever is still here, this is my message to you. I don't know if I answered your question, Nidhiji, but I don't have a ready-made answer.
Okay. On that note, Manojji, thank you so much for spending your time. I would still request you to be in our studio towards the end of the program. We can just have a quick chat and thing. Without much ado, let me now bring in, Dr. Tarun Chhabra. Yes,
Thank you. Thank you.
yes. Welcome, Dr.
You
Chhabra.
just have to guide me how to do my
Yes,
presentation. So,
yes,
do I
Dr.
just
Chhabra.
you just press?
So
Do I
you,
click on
I'll just
present here, or
yeah, yeah.
I click on
You can
present,
go to
right?
present. Yes, click on present.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then I can go to share
Uh,
screen,
then you can go to slides.
slides or share. Okay, slides,
You can share screen.
share screen. No, there's share screen
Share
coming.
screen, entire screen. Share screen, entire screen. Yeah.
From
But
where?
before it, just for our viewers, I just need to, yeah. Can you see that, sir? Share screen. You'll see
Share screen.
the
But
option.
before that, I have to go to
Click on
slides.
entire
Is it?
screen.
1 minute.
No. You can go directly share screen or slides, either
Your
of.
computer. So PowerPoint, I have to go to. My PowerPoint is there. I go to
Yeah.
slides, is it? And then
You
Google
can share
slide,
your screen. No,
share the
either you
screen.
share your screen or you
If I
can
share,
upload it. Either the option.
I have share screen. Now I have to go to my PowerPoint. Do I click share
No.
screen?
Then you. So, Dr. Chabra, let me guide you. Just click on present
Yes,
once. We'll start from scratch.
yes,
Click on
yes,
present. Go to share
yes,
screen.
yes,
There will be you'll have to click share screen again.
yes, yes.
Then
I've got that.
there's a section called as entire screen. Click on that. Yeah. And then there'll be a blue button that will light up share. That is the one that
It's not letting me
you'll have
click
to
on
click
that.
once again. Share.
It's not letting me click on entire screen.
You'll, yeah. So below that tab of entire screen, there's a panel which will be visible. Just that
Yes,
panel, and then that blue button will light up.
yes, and share. Okay, I click share.
Yes. Yeah, it's there.
So
So So
So
just for our
how do I
viewers
come up
and
and
all the
start now?
students sitting there, yeah, no, I'll start it. You just keep your PPT open. I'll just bring it on screen.
Are you able to see?
Just give me a, yeah, I'm able
Yeah,
to see.
yeah.
Just give me 1 minute. I'll just do a brief introduction for all our viewers who are students who are sitting there at the seminar halls. Dr. Tarun Chabbra is an expert on Toda culture and founder of the EBR Trust. EBR Trust is an NGO based in the Nilgiris, which is engaged in using traditional Toda and tribal ecological knowledge to restore a tea garden and surrounded by wilderness and biodiverse internet. So with that, Dr. Chabra, I welcome you to our talk today, to the rivers of life. As I said, this is one of the penultimate sessions. Thank you so much for taking your time out, and look
Thank you.
forward to hearing you.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure. Can you hear me? You can hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear
So,
you loud and clear.
yes. So,
Yes, yes,
welcome, welcome from the Nilgiris. And I speak on behalf of the Toda people and the Toda sanctification of freshwater sources. And the Todas, many people living in the foothills might not be aware that it is because of the Toda sanctification of their freshwater sources that the major river systems generated here, go down and provide not only 40% of hydroelectric power generation for Tamil Nadu state, but also the three states, it provides them with a lot of water for millions of people. And it is because of the sanctity accorded to these river systems since millennia. In fact, they've been living here for many millennia, the Toda people. So I'll just very briefly mention, some of their traits. They're one of the very few remaining indigenous vegetarian groups. Their temples are basically, located around these upper highlands of the Nilgiris, and around their hamlets you have these typical sholas here. You can have you can see the sholas in the galleries, and the vast extensive grasslands, and they come across as a climax ecosystem as a combination of several factors, and usually there's a stream flowing through almost every shola here, and many of these sholas have been protected. And even now, the Toda prayers are basically composed of, the sacred names, what they call kwasham, to the sacred landmarks, which are the sholas, the valleys, the trees, the rocks, etc. And all these have been sanctified. So this is the location of the Nilgiris and the associated biosphere reserve. And of course, the Nilgiris has lent its name, as you know, to the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, the very first one in India. And the Toda homeland constitutes the core of the NBR, the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, the islands, where all that water is generated. And it is because of the sanctity, because what we now call as the core area of the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve is basically the most sacred area of the Todas. 12 of the hills found in this area are endemic to this tiny area. They're not found anywhere else, in the world. So this is the NBR. You can see this roadside signboard. It lies at the trying junction of 3 Indian states and encompasses an area of 5,500 square kilometers. And this plant, typically you find, because of this heavy rainfall factor here, you find, many of these areas in the catchment areas of Nilgiris, it crosses more than 10,000 millimeters annually, the precipitation. So the plants have adapted here so well that we call them hygrophytes. You can see this plant is dripping with water here. And this is a impatiens known as Impatiens denisoni, one of the rarest balsams found in the Nilgiris. It took us several years to relocate. Maybe after about 80 years, we rediscovered it. And it's not found anywhere else except just in one valley of the Nilgiris, nowhere else in the world. And this is Impatiens mandroni, another wild balsam, which curiously has its closest relative in Africa, so linking it with the Gondwana land theory. And of course, the NBR covers a minuscule area, but it has 20% of India's flowering plants, 15% of butterflies, 23% of vertebrates, and as many as 63% of India evergreen woody plants are found in the NBR area. And the Toda country is the core of that. So this is the typical Toda patriarchs. Even their embroidery motifs that they wear on their Poothquilly cloaks are modeled from nature. And some of their traditional hamlets, you can see the pristine settings of some of those places, very close to one of the rivers. And they have these, barrel vaulted structures also inspired by the miniature rainbows. And they're, of course, buffalo herders, basically. But now the government has made them into unwilling farmers but still they're temples. Basically they have 6 grades of dairy temples from the lowest to the highest. And from the lowest, you have the Poshli, Torwali, Kurpoli, Bujoli, Kogwali, Po. So you have different grades, and all these are dairies. And only a man who undergoes the ordination ceremonies, I'll be showing you, at a specific water source, using different kind of thorny plants and other plants and barks and all that, he becomes a dairyman priest. And for all these 6 grades, there's an associated grade of buffalo, only which can be used for that. And he only can milk those buffaloes and take the milk into the temple. And into this, seemingly mundane process of dairying, they've incorporated a phenomenal array of rituals. And incidentally, the buffaloes that you see here also are endemic to the Nilgiris. It represents one of the 17 breeds of the Asiatic water buffalo, Bobalis bobalis, and commonly it's known as the Toda buffalo, because presumably the Todas came here so many thousands of years ago that it evolved into a new breed because of the climatic condition and things like that. So these are the different grades of their temple dairies, and you can see the temple breed. So we have 2 major river systems in the Nilgiris. One is a Kolikeen. In Toda, it's known as a Kolikeen. In the modern parlance, it's known as Mukurti Paikara system, because you have the Mukurti, it originates from the Mukurti peak, and then it goes down to the Paikar area. There are actually now 2 dams there, so that's why this is not looking like a river but a lake. But traditionally it was, a river, and very sacred to the Todas. So the Kolikeen has different names at different places. And according to the Todas, unfortunately now it's been dammed. What happened was, it originates here. There's a hill here which you see in the Mukurti area. It's known as Terdikain in Toda. And this Terdikain, what happened was, on the opposite side of Terdikain hill, the Todas had the highest grade of a temple, dairy temple known as Ti. And they were completely isolated. And the dairyman priest one day, he went to look for honey. And typically the Todas collect honey from tree cavities of these ancient shola trees, Apis cerana. So he came into the shola and a remote place, and he found this honey. And then he said, okay, let me go and collect it on my own, because the tea dairy priest known as a Poshlal, he had only one assistant with him in the temple. There's nobody else allowed, a young boy. So he said, let me go and harvest all that honey and send it to my home and consume part of it. The same day, his young boy assistant found some more honey, and very little honey compared to what this priest had found. And he brought that honey back and first gave it to the priest. And by the rules of consumption of honey, there are rules and regulations. Only after the priest had partaken, he took the rest of it. So the next day, the priest was coming into the shola, and he got a bamboo vessel, and he tied it with a creeper, and he filled it up fully with honey, and he was very happy. But in his hurry, he had not fastened the creeper properly. And as he came down from the shola, coming down, the creeper snapped, and the vessel fell down. And as it fell down, what happened? The typical bamboo vessel like this. As it fell down, it broke open, and the honey started to flow out. And the Toda myth of the origin of this Kolikeen or the Mukurti system is that as it started flowing, the honey became water. And this broken bamboo vessel became a snake. And this snake started pursuing the priest, and started chasing him. And he started to run because he got petrified from the snake, the origin of that. And as he started to run, he ran down. And after a while, he came across this black. That's why it's known as the first crossing point I'll be showing you is known as Coil Kuarpa, because coil in Toda is bamboo. So the first crossing point of the Mukurti or the Kolikeen is known as Coil Kuarpa. That means the river where the bamboo broke. And after he started running, this is how the Todas harvest honey from Apis aurata and in their tree cavities even today. So the snake started pursuing him, and he started running. And as he ran, he came across this black-naped hare.
Dr. Chabra, I think so. There seems to be some issue. Just hold on and wait for him to. Dr. Chabra, he seemed to have lost. Just yeah, he'll be joining back. So yeah, so while Dr. Chabra comes back, Tarun, I'd like to share with our viewers at the campus. Over the past 2 days, we had this. We have been interacting with the Toda community. There have been representatives from the community coming over at the camp, and it's a very interesting thing that through this festival we were exposed to such people, such communities, tribal communities, and people who are living uh, in these kind of encatchment areas and working towards conservation in their own ways, which has a lot of relevance in our times today. So it's very interesting. So they took a session for all the school children and all, where they were talking about basic tenets of conservation, and what the traditional methods that they have been adopting. And one of the best part was, of course, the beautiful songs that they had, the Toda community songs that were running for this, and they were sharing with us. There was also a beautiful dance program. So this whole idea that the conservation, very modern conduit or modern construct, is not really true, because there's plenty of ways in which when communities like the Todas, Soligas, or different communities that we saw a lot of people also, when we were talking about the Narmada Bachao Andolan that was there at the campus, the numerous communities that are living uh, besides the river and water bodies, they have a conscious approach to what is the real relevance, and they're conscious about preserving these water bodies, because they know their lives are directly dependent on these resources that are there. It's only when there's a commercial construct, or people from generally from when we divert rivers for purposes other than that are used by the local communities, that's when we see a lot of these kind of destruction and malified things happening. So that's a very interesting idea, I think. So we just wait till uh, Dr. Chabra rejoins again. Till he does. I just wonder if Manoji, are you there? If can you listen to me, Manoji? Yeah, sorry, Manoji. There's this question till Dr. Chavra comes back, and I was hoping that we'll pose it. So there's a very interesting question from Madhuri. She says that today dirty rivers flow by the city, while clean rivers. I'll just read it out. While clean rivers continue to come away from far away into our taps. The context of disconnect, how can rivers become an integral part of our lives? And which is very true, right? The rivers in our cities have become ours, be it
Yeah,
Pune, be it
absolutely.
Mumbai, or be it elsewhere. But,
Because our rivers are all flowing through our taps, and as long as our taps continue to flow, we would have hardly
yeah,
anything to any concern for our rivers. Uh, this is a fact. How we have really lost this connect, and this is ill effect of runaway urbanization, where urban uh, urban spaces and urbanites like us, we have become colonial in our actions, and without really realizing how colonial we are at the moment. And so we are extracting all these resources from the hinterland, uh, unmindful of whatever is happening, unmindful of how these actions of ours are actually impacting those resources, where and this will continue as long as the people at the point where these resources are diverted, they do not start to get deprived. It is already happening in many places. Like for Bombay, the water for Bombay comes from these dams far away, and the people there are now saying, these dams, if water is there, it should come to us, not why should it go hundreds of kilometers away? And that understanding and that kind of conflicting situations are beginning to emerge. And soon enough, we might be really facing these serious uh, conflict of interest. So these are uh, after effect of a process of urbanization, which today is not really uh, into the discourse, into the larger discourse, but it is slowly it is getting there, and sooner than later we might have serious issues. But you see, in response to your question, how to resolve it, in some senses, Delhi has started to do that. What Delhi is doing now, not because Delhi thinks that it should not be taking water from 200 kilometers, but Delhi thinks that it will have no more water to bring from long distances. So Delhi has started to revive its own water bodies and and recharge its groundwater, and to see that how some of the water needs of the city can be met from local resources. Even today in Bombay, there are these big water bodies which meet some part of the water demand of Bombay, but because the population has grown so much, so they have to import water from elsewhere for meeting the drinking water purposes and others. So it is only that one is this whole process of urbanization has to undergo a drastic introspection, and why should there be just one single large city? Why can't there be 10, 15, 20 big cities, small cities all over, rather than one big city? Because one big city is the problem. Delhi is the problem. Bombay is the problem. So these are, and so cities, urban centers have to actually, and then coming back to my that theory of groundwater being enough to meet our needs, if we let the rivers recharge our groundwater.
So one thing, Manojji, I had a question on that related to that. There were, I remember some reports which had come out from CSC and all talking about the level of exploitation and the aquifers. There was this whole idea that we are overusing our, you know, all across India groundwater to an extent where there's a big crisis that is waiting for us. In that
Mhm.
context, if you can, place your own thoughts in terms of this,
See,
conservation and
uh,
water.
groundwater is a resource that recharges annually, thanks to the monsoon. Now, as long as we are getting water, we are not in control of our water. And when I say we, I don't mean just as an individual, but say city like Delhi or any city for that matter. As long as that city is aware of the water that it has, so every city needs to have some kind of a water budget, needs to carry out some kind of a water budgeting of itself. Okay, this is the amount of water that I have, this is the kind of demand that I have, whether I am able to meet the demand against the water that I have got, or the demand is more than that. So then do I need to reduce the demand? Or if I have water more than the demand, then till what time can I allow the demand to grow? So you see, there has to be a proper localized water planning. Today, there is no localized water planning. Delhi thinks endlessly it will get water from somewhere. So it can grow as much as it want. It can increase its demand as much as it wishes. That is the problem today. And that is what happens when we have these serious water scarcity situations during the summer times, because we are not on top of our water planning. Because as water administrators or as water managers, we think that water is being generated somewhere, and that water will continue to come to us, come what may. So this is the disconnect. The real disconnect is this: water planning must happen at the local level through a local water budgeting process. If that's what we can do, we will be able to manage it. If not, then all of a sudden we'll come to a stage what they call as tomorrow water is going to finish, day zero or whatever they call it. So you see, this is we have been really very uh, disrespectful of water, and with that attitude we have been wasteful. We have you see, all our processes are so very wasteful. Our agriculture is so very wasteful. You see, I think our agriculture is the most water wasteful agriculture across the globe, just because मॉनसून इतना पानी हर साल दे देता है हमको, हमारे ग्राउंड वाटर को रिचार्ज कर देता है, कि फिर हमको लगता ही नहीं कि कभी कोई दिक्कत होने वाली. So this is really a very irresponsible manner of our water planning that we are having today. And you know, there is even a controversy regarding how much water really India has. There is a water budget, a national water budget that the Central Water Commission has formulated. There is a national water budget that the Central Groundwater Board is talking about. There is a water budget that the water sector professionals are talking about. And the main problem is in this water budget, the main variable which is confusing is how much water that comes to the country actually evaporates. Because you know, all over the average evaporation rate is 60%, whereas for our calculation purposes we say it is only 15 to 20%. So against the 60%, which is a global average, we are still working with a 15 to 20% evaporation rate, which is totally unrealistic. And with that, we are planning. So we have actually overrun our availability by many times, and that's why we say our groundwater is being overexploited. On you see, our groundwater is being overexploited because we are a groundwater nation, and our rivers are in trouble. So वो जितना उनको रिचार्ज करना चाहिए वो कर नहीं पा रही हैं, इसलिए हमको लग रहा है कि we are actually the groundwater is going down. It is going down. It is going down because we are not managing it the way it should be managed, and the way it has been managed over centuries.
Okay, Manoj, there's another thing that comes to my mind is, I was saving these questions for our discussion later on, but I think I'll just pose them to you right away. This whole idea that has been there by the recent, judicial courts in terms of personification of river, giving a status of river. Do you think it will help in the conservation process? And we have seen that in New Zealand court. We have seen that even in India as well.
You see, why do we need a judicial direction? Why do we need a constitutional direction if we can understand that I am a river? If I can understand, if I can understand that a river is just like me, a river has to be just like when a new baby is born, and the care that we take of that baby, that's the kind of tenderness, that's the kind of, you see, it requires an attitudinal change within us. It uh, Even if the Supreme Court tomorrow says, okay, Ganga is a jurisdic person, Ganga is a living entity, what is going to change? Until unless my attitude changes, until unless the people who are managing the rivers, their attitude changes. So just having a court judgment say like this is hardly going to, okay, it will give us optics, it will give us some headlines in the newspaper, but no, it has to be a mental attitudinal change. Only that will make a difference. You see, we have lost respect for our water. हम गंगा को मैया तो आज भी बोलते हैं, but do we really treat her like our mother? अगर मैया है तो हम किस कैसे हम एक्चुअली हम तो उसमें डुबकी लगा ही नहीं सकते. मतलब वी हैव टू बी सो रेस्पेक्टफुल. गांधी जी का एक बड़ा फेमस वो है, गांधी जी और जवाहरलाल नेहरू का, आई डोंट नो, इट्स लाइक ए क्लीशे नाउ, कि गंगा किनारे गए प्रयाग में और गांधी जी ने कहा कि भाई एक बाल्टी भर के मुझे एक लोटे के साथ में पानी ले आओ गंगा जी से. नेहरू जी ने कहा, अरे बापू आप क्यों, आप जाओ नहाओ उसमें. तो नो नो नो, आई कैन नॉट डिफाइल द गंगा. गंगा से मैं थोड़ा पानी ले सकता हूँ नहाने के लिए, बट मैं घुस के, अरे मैं कितने पाप किए हैं, मैंने पापी, मैं थोड़ी डिफाइल कर सकता हूँ गंगा के अंदर. Now, this is the kind of attitude, this is the kind of respect that we have to actually develop around our water bodies, both rivers and our ponds. You know, you go to Chhattisgarh, every pond, Chhattisgarh is full of ponds. I served in Chhattisgarh. Chhattisgarh is full of ponds. And आप देखेंगे, every pond has got a reigning temple. There is a temple which is just on the pond. तो जब आप, so the pond is part of that temple. तो अब आप उस पॉन्ड को कैसे वो करोगे, पोल्यूट करोगे? तो आप पॉन्ड से तरफ पानी लाके और दूर जाके यूज करोगे. Now this is what has gone missing, and this has gone missing because it has been systematically been done by our colonial masters. It is they who actually brought in the disrespect for water and our water bodies in our minds, because they wanted to monetize water systems. उन्होंने उसको किया, उन्होंने लोकल स्टीवर्डशिप को खत्म किया, उन्होंने जो है आज जो है इरिगेशन डिपार्टमेंट, कैनाल डिपार्टमेंट, पहले कोई ऐसे डिपार्टमेंट नहीं हुआ करते थे, लोकल बॉडीज ही उनको मैनेज करती थी. राजा लोग पॉन्ड्स बनाते थे बट वो मैनेज नहीं करते थे, मैनेज लोग पंचायतें ही करती थी, लोकल लोग करते थे. इन्होंने फर्स्ट थिंग दैट दे, क्योंकि उनको कोई रेवेन्यू तो मिलता नहीं था उसमें, first thing that they did in Bihar and Bengal was to snatch away the proprietorship of the local water bodies away from the people. And unfortunately, post-independence, we have continued with that. That is the problem.
Yeah, Manoj, you had spoken about this idea of stewardship. आप उसको जरा एक्सपैंड करेंगे, स्टूवर्डशिप होती क्या है, इसमें क्या करना पड़ता है, कैसे कोई वाटर स्टूवर्ड बन सकता है इन दैट सेंस?
lecture पिला रहे you know, again I come back to parenthood. I am responsible for my children for few earlier years, so that they have all that they need require for their wholesome growth to a stage where they become adult enough and be on their own. That's our family system. That's our the basis of our families कि हम जो हैं किसी चीज को देखभाल हम देखभाल कर रहे हैं. देखभाल का मतलब ये नहीं है कि हम उसको ट्रेन कर रहे हैं फॉर समथिंग. देखभाल ये है कि हम because we are adult, we are trying to provide things for the wellness of that which is still growing. And that is the whole concept of stewardship. Stewardship is not ownership per se. Stewardship is helping, assisting something to come into their own. So if we say a river, if we say a pond, stewardship means that we act in a responsible fashion. Because why we need to be responsible? Because we have means to be irresponsible. क्योंकि हमको दिमाग, हमको टूल्स, हमको टेक्नोलॉजीज, हमको वो सब चीजें मिली हुई हैं कि we can be very irresponsible. So the concept of stewardship comes to act responsibly, with a forethought, with this sense that if I do something, it might harm. So it is not stewardship, and is not the same as ownership. Ownership is very different, and stewardship is very different. Stewardship is facilitation. Ownership is I can do whatever I wish with something that I own. Stewardship is not that I can do whatever I want. No. I don't know if I have
Fascinating.
made it clear.
No. I get your point. I get your point in that. Finally, एक क्वेश्चन करते हैं देखेंगे सेशन का सर. नमामि गंगे या गंगा एक्शन प्लान इतनी फैनफेयर के साथ लॉन्च हुआ था. मुझे याद है जब हम बच्चे थे तो बनारस वगैरह में they had erected all these big the tanks and everything about the whole plan that was launched. From there to coming to the Namami Gange plan that has been there, and yet there hasn't been after even आप बोल सकते हैं कि कई करोड़ रुपए बह गए हैं पानी में, पानी की तरह से. Despite that fact, you haven't seen any tangible results. What do you think are the reasons for that, and what would your since you have been involved with rivers for very, very many years, what do you think is the possible solution to this thing?
You see, we started with wrong understanding, and we have persisted with a misunderstanding of the any problem. 50% of solution happens when we understand the problem. But if we don't understand the problem, we'll continue to do things the way we have understood. And that is the sad story of Ganga, Yamuna, or other rivers in our country. Our understanding of our river systems has been very poor, or I would say we have not understood our rivers. We think our rivers are canals. We think our rivers are canals which can be mutilated, which can be shifted, or which should carry clean water. Rivers are not canals. Rivers are not tubes. Rivers are living ecosystems. And this fact that rivers are living ecosystems, this is still to be mainstreamed within the establishment. हम लोग बहुत समय से इन बातों को कर रहे हैं. Crying ourselves hoarse कि साहब, it is an ecosystem. It is not just a physical entity. It's not just a source of water for you. It is a source of water for you, but it is much more than that. And unless you understand what it is, आप जो हैं गलतियां ही करते रहोगे. This whole concept of interlinking of rivers क्या है? It thinks कि river is just a conveyor of water. ठीक है, if it is a conveyor of water, it is a canal. आज ऐसे बह रही है, उसको उधर मोड़ लो. So this misconception, this misunderstanding is at the root of the thing that we have not. ये सब बात करते हैं कि यमुना दिल्ली में यमुना लंदन की थेम्स क्यों नहीं हो सकती. कैसे हो सकती है भाई? लंदन की थेम्स, वेयर इज लंदन फर्स्ट? वेयर इज दिल्ली? दिल्ली इज इन द हिंटरलैंड, लंदन इज इन द एस्चुअरी. ज्योग्राफी बहुत अलग है? और वहां की नदियां, वहां तो हर दूसरे तीसरे दिन बारिश होती है भाई. हमारे यहां तो सिर्फ 3 महीने बारिश होती है. Our rivers are very different rivers. Their rivers are very different rivers. उनके लिए जो whatever is possible for them is not possible for us. Whatever is okay for them is not okay for us. We have to first understand our rivers properly. और वो तब नहीं होगा जब as long as pollution control boards are in charge. क्योंकि I'm not blaming the pollution control board, because that is their education, that is their expertise. They are not experts, they are not river rejuvenators, they are not river conservators. Their role is to clean water. That is pollution control. Their role is to keep pollution away. Their role is not to bring flow into river. But whose job is it to bring flow into river? Nobody's. That is the tragedy. कोई डिपार्टमेंट ऐसा नहीं है आज हिंदुस्तान में जो कहे कि my duty is to ensure that my river flows. फ्लो को खींचने के लिए सब है. इरिगेशन डिपार्टमेंट, यस, नदी से पानी निकाल के इरिगेट कर दो. ड्रिंकिंग वाटर डिपार्टमेंट, यस, नदी से पानी निकाल के लोगों को पिला दो. सीवेज ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट, यस, कि जब सीवेज निकले तो उसको मैं साफ कर दूं. इंडस्ट्रीज डिपार्टमेंट, यस, कि इंडस्ट्रीज एस्टेब्लिश हो जाएं और इंडस्ट्रीज से अगर एफ्लुएंट आए तो उसको हम वो ट्रीट हो. बट देयर इज नो डिपार्टमेंट जो कहता है कि मेरी नदी में फ्लो रहे. तो फिर कैसे होगा? और जो जिस नदी में फ्लो नहीं है वो नदी है ही नहीं. या तो वी एक्सेप्ट कि भाई हमारी नदियां नो मोर रिवर्स, दे आर और सीवेज कैनाल्स. या तो हम ये एक्सेप्ट कर लें कि आवर रिवर्स आर सीवेज कैनाल्स एंड दैट इज व्हाट वी विल लिव विद एंड दैट इज हाउ वी विल प्लान आवर लाइफ. ठीक है. बट अगर हमको स्टिल कहना है कि नहीं वी वांट रिवर्स, देन फिर वो सीवेज कैनाल नहीं हो सकते, फिर वो इंडस्ट्रियल एफ्लुएंट कैनाल्स नहीं हो सकते. They will need to find a department जो कि हमारी नदियों का फ्लो को इंश्योर करे, which unfortunately today is missing. Sorry,
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया मनोज जी. थैंक यू सो मच फॉर योर टाइम. मैं जो आपसे क्वेश्चन पूछने वाला था वो हो गया. तो आई होप ऑन दैट मैसेज we'll take that with us. मैं अब तरुण जी को लेके आता हूँ, डॉक्टर छाबरा. थैंक यू सो मच मनोज जी.
So, hello.
Yes, Dr.
I
Chabra.
don't know when did we get disconnected or what happened. I don't.
Yeah, I think so. We got disconnected from your end, sir.
What at what stage?
Uh, you were talking about the Toda culture. You were talking about that story, sir. You were talking about the mythological story that was there, the pot of honey that came rolling down the hill.
It got disconnected right there, is it? Because my
Yeah.
internet was okay. I didn't even know that. I went through the whole presentation not knowing that.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
I
Okay.
didn't even
So
know.
if you
How
can,
this didn't show me.
yeah, yeah,
Should I connect
yeah,
again?
yeah. Please,
Should
can
I
you share
connect?
your screen?
But
Yes.
can you let me know whether that's disconnected? Because I didn't. I had no idea that it was disconnected. This didn't show me anything. I can share the screen.
Yes. Yeah, please. Just a minute. I'm taking
Okay.
it.
Now I can start. Isn't it?
Yeah.
See,
Yes,
I
we can
can
see
bring
your
my PPT
screen.
there now.
Yeah.
So just let me know if I'm disconnecting. Because I. Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Yeah, I
Can you
can
hear
hear
me?
you. Yes, I can hear
Okay, but
you,
if I you
Doctor
get
Chabra.
disconnected, let me know. So I
Yeah.
mentioned about some of these things about the Toda.
Yes, you
I
did.
mentioned all these
Yes.
things. We saw all
Yeah.
this. I'll,
We were on that fascinating story that you were talking about. Yes.
yeah. So I'm sorry, I didn't know it was disconnected at all. Yeah. So this is the Colicine, Mukuti Paikala system. So I mentioned about how this priest, went and collected the honey and wanted to consume it himself. And this is the origin of that Mukurti area, the Colicine in the Shola. And I mentioned that in this bamboo vessel fell down. Uh, when he was carrying it there, he filled it up with honey, this bamboo vessel. He tied it with a creeper. And when he came out of the Shola, it fell down because he hadn't secured it. The creeper broke, and when the bamboo vessel fell, it split open. And as the bamboo vessel, split open, the honey which flowed down became the source of the river, which you can actually see that stream coming in from that shola. And the bamboo vessel became a snake. And so the first, crossing point is known as coil cord per, because coil means bamboo, because the bamboo vessel broke, and that started the honey flowing. So this is how the todas collect honey from their tree cavity hives. So a similar a tree cavity up where he was harvesting the honey, and when the bamboo vessel broke when he carried it outside. So it's known as coil cord per. And when it became a snake, the bamboo vessel, it started chasing this priest, and he ran. And as he ran, he ran for a certain point, and when he came across this black naped hair, he took that black cloth which the priest was wearing and he threw it onto this black naped hair, which continued to run with the cloth top of him. And the snake, thinking that to be the priest, kept chasing him. And of course, the hair was too fast for the snake, and that was the course taken by the honey, which started at the water. The honey became the water, and the water followed the same course. And according to the story, that was this is the origin point. Followed the whole course of this Kolikeen or the Mukurti Paikara system river. This is the Toda origin of that. So there are separate crossing points. Which can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Dr. Chabra.
Okay. So this is just let me know if it gets thing. So this is a crossing point. So during different courses of the river, the Todas have about more than a dozen crossing points, and these crossing points were so important and sacred that they were different for the lay people, different for the dairyman priest, and only to be crossed on certain days of the week and on premises of purity. So we saw the earlier one, which was Coil Kodpa, named after the coiled bamboo vessel. This is Kotipa, and this is the hill known as Koti to the Todas. So this crossing point of the river is known as Kotipa. And I was mentioning that some years back we found a rare impatiens, balsam on this slopes of this Koti deity hill, and we named it as Impatiens Kotiana, a new species of balsam. So this is another crossing point, and this is below the Mukurti peak here. It's known as Tatolba. Olb in Toda means cave. So there's a cave there. So there's another crossing point. And of course, the Mukurti National Park is named after that peak. So these are different courses of the Paikara River, which is now a lake. You can see the river only flowing in the dry season, unfortunately. And you can also see, several areas which have been planted with all these exotic trees and things like that, because there are sholas in between also. And it could only, if you crossed it in impurity. There's a story about how a man, during the British time, he crossed this water in an impure state, and he found honey here. So two things: he crossed this in an impure state because he had slept with his wife the previous night, and he crossed this river in that state, and he collected honey, and in that state. And just below this rock here, a tiger pounced on him, and this is a true story because there's a song composed. It's about 150-year-old, 120-year-old song, and he was, he killed here by the tiger. So there are stories about how if you transgress the sanctity of these crossing points, then what would happen. So this is another crossing point of the Paikara, the Koliki, known as Kedikalpa. And when it goes down the slopes of the Nilgiris, it loses its sanctity. This is known as Kardashpa. And this also marks the place where the snake chased the black-naped hare and it went down. So this is now a lake, but from the Mukurti, you can see the entire Mukurti, Paikara, the whole entire river here, the entire river, and then it flows down and it goes into the Moyar and other places and into the Bhavani finally. So these are the crossing points. And the Paikara Kolikin is rendered all the more sacred because there is a sacred, crossing point and a waterfall known as a deity known as Alway on the middle reaches of this river. And you can even see the entry point to the god's abode there in Alway. The crossing point is known as Argva. I hope you can hear me, no? You're hearing me?
Yes, Dr. Chabbra.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So the other major river of the Nilgiris is known as Kinnatali, which is known as, in common parlance, as avalanche. And this also had several crossing points specific for the priest and different ones for the lay people. In the dry season, you can see them once again. This is a crossing point. This waterfall is known as Teba River, and it joins another crossing point known as Kenpa. And then as it goes downstream, you go to Peneshpa. So this is the whole course of this avalanche emerald system there. And these are not only just rivers, but they're gods, they're deities. Unfortunately, they've been dammed. And so in the small area. And then you have other sacred rivers of the Todas, the Kulkalpa, which is Upper Bhavani, another river, Kulkalpa, and Todas living close to that. This is known as Tepa, which means the river of the gods. And the Todas get their, Ooty gets its water supply from this place. And it goes up to Wellington and all, the river of the gods, Parsons Valley. So another river, smaller river. This is the Totkalpa, which is now known as Emerald Valley. It joins up with the avalanche Kinnatili. Another smaller river known as Kedarpa, now dammed and known as Porthimand. So all these areas have about a dozen dams. A tiny Toda area has about a dozen hydroelectric reservoirs. Can you imagine? And all these, the sanctity of these two major rivers has all been lost. And then each and every hamlet has streams. They can be used for dairy temple use, for ordination rites of the priest, for sacred cooking, for guests to bathe, for their pregnancy rites, for their saltwater ceremonies, domestic cooking. Can you imagine? Each one of the scores of Toda temples, hamlets, has so many water sources. So they had to protect their ecosystem because these waters have to be flowing even during the driest months. Ordination ceremonies, a priest uses specific species of thorny plants and bamboos and tree barks here, and then only becomes a priest. So I was mentioning that all the different 6 grades of Toda temples are basically dairies, from the lowest to the highest. So you have the Potli, Torwali, Kurpoli, Vujoli, Kogwali, Po, and then the Ti. So these are the different grades. And only a man who undergoes the ordination ceremonies, using a specific water source. And the elaboration of the ceremony varies from the grade of the temple. It may take several days, it may be over in 1 hour. And then he becomes the dairyman priest, and only he can milk the buffalo herds associated with his grade of dairy temple. And like I mentioned, the Toda buffaloes themselves are an endemic breed of the Asiatic water buffalo, Bobalis bobalis. This is the ordination ceremony, and only endemic to the Nilgiris. And the Todas have divided them into the secular buffaloes for domestic use and the sacred buffaloes for different hierarchical temples. So the priest is a dairyman priest, and the temple is a dairy. So you can see the priest coming out of the temple to collect water from the dairy temple stream. And nobody else can touch these streams. Only the priest can touch these streams. Nobody else is allowed to touch these streams. You can see different categories. Each stream has its own sacred word, which is chanted in the prayer by the priest each and every day. Be it the dairy temple stream, or the ordination stream, or the one for the saltwater ceremonies, etc. And there are many other streams also which are, the waters are not consumed, but they're sacred, which I'll be talking about, which are mentioned in the prayers of the Todas. And then the sacred cooking, the buttermilk, the sacred food, and things like that, which have to be prepared from the sacred waters of the dairy temple stream. The sacred food cooked from the sacred waters, millet preparations. And this, he takes this bark known as Meliosmia simplicifolia, known as there, and only the priest can touch this bark. And he purifies the temple. You can see that he's purifying the stream with this bark, and only a Toda can handle, dairyman priest can handle this. A lay Toda cannot handle this bark. And since streams have different, sanctity, when a priest wants to relinquish his priesthood, he touches the dairy waters, the domestic waters. So every hamlet has a domestic water which can be drawn for their mundane, cooking and things like that in the houses. So the moment he touches the domestic stream, he loses his sanctity, the priest. So, the streams have different levels of sanctity. So much so that, if there are certain hamlets where death is disallowed. So if a person dies in that sacred hamlet, they have to purify all the dairy implements inside the dairy temples. And, and so you can see he's taking sacred water and purifying it with that same bark I showed you. And then he's taking the water here, you can see, he's taking the water here and he's pouring it onto the vessels and he's purifying it. So this is the sanctity of the water there. And these women have to leave their hamlets till the next new moon day. He's sanctifying the different grades of the vessels. He's sanctifying different dairy implements, the bamboo vessels, etc. All the different, even the focus of divinity in the temple has to be, purified with that. And then restoring sanctity. This is the same bark. After temple has been rebuilt, he is purifying the temple with that bark, and what he uses to purify the waters as well. And during the saltwater ceremonies, which take place during the different seasons of the year, the water has to be drawn from a specific water source, different water source. There are some hamlets where the temple is so sacred that there are a separate stream where the men folk who are going to the temple have to bathe in it. And they have to be clad only with a breech clout. They can't wear modern underclothing. And there are other hamlets where on festive days, the cooking has to be done. The water has to be, drawn for the festive cooking. So many kinds of water bodies around one Toda hamlet where just 25, 30 people live. It's quite amazing. And all of them should be flowing right through the year. And this is a sacred spring at one of their hamlets. And it's amazing, I've seen this, that if it has defiled the water of this, it goes dry. You might not believe it, but I've seen it with my own eyes. This is the sanctity of their places. You're able to hear me, no? You're hearing me, Shashwat?
Yes, Dr. Chabbra. Yes,
okay.
Dr. Chabbra.
Fine. So this is a abandoned Toda hamlet, just to show you how the Todas have utilized an oxbow. Normally they make their buffalo pen only out of stone walls. And here you can see, even though this is abandoned, that you can see that the stone wall occupies only about 20-30% of the buffalo pen. The rest of it they've utilized is oxbow to form the boundaries of a buffalo pen. So it's quite ingenious. And their wetlands, we saw that the wetlands have been flooded, thanks to these hydroelectric reservoirs which have come up in their area. Not only the rivers have become lakes, but the most pristine wetlands have been flooded. And these are the places where the Todas harvest traditionally their thatch grass, Edhkwehlynawd rangacharai, which is not found anywhere else in the world. It's almost on the brink now, very difficult. And these are this conical temple you see here. These are very sacred temple complexes where the entire shola, grassland, wetland, water body expanse around it of several hundred acres is inviolate. You can't even answer nature's calls around these places. So this is how they protected their ecosystem, and they have their own microclimate in these kind of places. They also recognize the the water body hydrologic conserving species like the Uticularia, and this is a Hediotus verticillaris. It's in Toda. It's known as Porthol Edge. Porthol was a priest of the highest Theed temple, who went to collect the honey we spoke about at the start. And this is known as Porthol Edge. And this Hediotus verticillaris, in its vertical rosette of leaves that you see here, if you look inside, you can see jugs of water there. So these kind of species are conserved around their water body, so they have water right through the driest parts of the year also. And then management. Until a few decades ago, the priest used to ritually set fire to the wetlands and the grasslands to herald the onset of winter. And although this was found to be beneficial for the ecosystem, it has been proscribed by the government now. So this is basically a direct method of ecosystem management, which has now been proscribed by the department, unfortunately. And so the Todas are only allowed to follow indirect methods of ecosystem management. But incidentally, even today, fire has to be made only by using friction and the sticks of Litsea whiteana. Fire, say, to light the temple lamp or the funeral pyre can be made only with Litsea whiteana. But traditionally, it was also used to set fire to the grasslands. So the indirect methods of ecosystem management, one of them are the saltwater ceremonies that occur during the 4 seasons of the year. And even today, a failure to perform the ceremony is an invitation for ecological disaster. So if this saltwater ceremony takes place, say in May, so if you don't perform the ceremony, and it has to be performed by all the 15 clans of the Todas, if it's not performed, the Todas believe that the monsoon will be a failure, which means there'll be less pasture, there'll be less water in the sacred water bodies, and if there's less pasture, there'll be less milk, there'll be less honey, there'll be less fruits, etc. So these are indirect methods of ecosystem management, rigorously followed by the Todas, and these are ways of according sanctity to them. And there's a separate water source for this ceremony also. This is a ceremony. And then once a year, the Todas gather on this hill Posh, and they pray to the Paikara river deity, the Kolikeen, which is flowing just below. They pray for ecological well-being and for a bountiful monsoon and for benediction from the river deity. So they do it every year in the month of April or May, usually. They're praying to the Paikara river deity for benediction, general well-being, ecological well-being. And they also gather, these are indirect methods which are still performed by the Todas. And they also go to some of the deity hills like Contre, and with the priest and the sacred milk, they pray to the river deities and the hill deities for ecological well-being of the environment. They do that every year. These are the 2 hills related to the onset of the southwesterly monsoon. This is known as Kashgol, the abode of the deity Kashgol in Toda, better known by its British given name, Nilgiri Peak, where you can see this twin peak where the winter sun is setting. And the Toda belief is when the monsoon winds come from Kerala, which is just on the other side, they swirl around this twin peak, like you perambulate around a sacred, shrine or something. And then they settle it, go to another deity hill on the other end of the Nilgiris. This is known as Conte. They also perambulate around the first monsoon mist there. They perambulate around this hill, and then they set in over the rest of the plateau. And the Todas would tell me in the 1990s that right through the 3-4 months of the monsoon, 4 months from June to September, these peaks, the monsoon clouds will not, be lifted from these 2 hills. That means you can't see these peaks. But today, sometimes during the peak of the monsoon in July, you suddenly see these 2 peaks, and the Todas point out there's some climatic change happening. And they also have plant indicators which also indicate that. So they're able to indicate the climatic changes from these. Then in rites of passage, the use of water, naming ceremony, you can see the grandfather uncovering the child's face outdoors and pointing out sacred elements of the landscape. And he'll probably be named after one of them. For instance, this infant who's being named, his grandfather here, his name was Unir, after a sacred dairy stream. And his grandfather was named after this pool, Mojiker. His grandfather was known as Moji. So they're named after some of these sacred water bodies. So they're protected by the Todas. And then in the rites of passage, in their pregnancy ceremonies, in the darkness of the new moon night, he collects these bamboo reeds, and from a different water source, he collects water, which is is poured over the back of a sacred calf. So it gets sanctified. It's believed to get sanctified by this process, and it is given You can see how he's pouring the water in these leaf cups. This seemingly sanctified water is given to the pregnant lady to drink during her pregnancy rites. In funerals too, there's a separate water source because they have separate funeral hamlets there, each of one of the 15 clans. And they have a separate water source. At the culmination of the funeral ceremonies, you can see a pot is filled with water and broken onto this stone. So different water sources. Indicator plants. This indicates this is known as the monsoon season flower. Kwadkol poof literally means the monsoon season flower in Toda. It's a anemone. And then this Nilgiri lily indicates the final phase of the monsoon. This indicates the end of the monsoon. And when this starts to mass flower, when the shoulders are painted white by Mikilika, Nilgirika, or Moj, the monsoon ends within a week or so. And then, of course, post-monsoon flowers like this exocum. And nowadays, when they find that these indicator plants are not mass flowering in the proper cycles, the Todas understand that there's some climatic change happening. They may not know it's happening at a global level, but they can point out locally. What is related to the dream time? There's lots of dream time stories, the mythological stories related to the gods and goddesses, and all these waters are mentioned in the prayers of the respective clans and hamlets. This is how the Todas pray. You can see the priest praying here. You can see that he's holding his arm, right arm, and the left one hand touching the elbow. This is how they pray, the Todas typically. To the dream time, the god Kwate was challenged that if he wanted to be accepted as a god, he should make the waters of this stream, very steep stream, Abhiyaan, flow backwards. So he was undeterred. He took this huge cylindrical stone and placed it in the course of this stream. And naturally, it got dammed and the water started to flow backwards. So he did a couple of things like this and he got accepted as a god. So all these sacred water bodies are also protected. The god Kwaten came across this, a female deity known as Tekosh bathing in this pool in the river Pulplive. Beautiful pool there. They can even show you the indentations where he placed her feet and her bangles. And these are the peaks of those god and goddess. The pinnacle peak that you see here represent Kwaten's abode, and on the side is the female Tekosh. And this relates to the dream time. This man Ponitan, he went. You can see. I'll just show you that. You can see there's a part of the funeral ceremony. You can see people sitting in pairs of the same sex, putting their heads together and mourning loudly. Then they change partners. This is one of the funeral rituals performed by the Todas at every ritual. Now, what happened was this man went to the afterworld, the story goes, and they thought he wasn't coming back. So they did his funeral ceremonies and they sacrificed a few buffaloes because they need a buffalo in the afterworld. So when this man came back, Ponitan, from the afterworld, Ammanod, he was surprised as he was approaching his hamlet to see the head buffalo of his herd, Enmon, there. And he said, "Why are you here?" They said, "No, you weren't coming back." So they did all the rituals. And now you will have to go back to the afterworld. So the man and buffalo put their heads together and they wept. And from these tears formed this lake known as the tear pools or Kenir Care. And this ritual is performed after that in the funeral ceremonies. And this is the Marliman Lake, which is actually supplies part of Ooty's water supply. This is the tears pool in Toda. Then waters along the journey to the afterworld. Along the journey to the Toda afterworld, a departing spirit crosses over a dozen mythical landmarks, all of which can be amazingly seen as natural physical sites on the field, including the natural steps that he ascends. Similarly, this is a place where the female spirit, there's a pestle which will be burnt at a funeral. And she comes to this place where you can see a mortar here, a mortar-like pit here, and she puts the pestle there and pounds the grain that has been kept near the corpse. So these are sacred water bodies on the journey to the afterworld. This is the Puvirkeen, which he crosses en route to the afterworld, the Bhavanipura. Other sacred waters also mentioned in that myths and stories. I won't go into the stories. Then defiling of sacred waters. This is the effluence. You have this one factory in the Nilgiris, unfortunately, on the precincts of Ooty, known as Sterling Biotech, and they make gelatin, and they've been discharging now it's finally closed, but they've been discharging all these effluents here. And we've been fighting that. You can see pollution taking place. People are planting exotic trees on virgin grasslands. And then hydroelectric reservoirs. We spoke about almost a dozen hydroelectric dams in a tiny Toda area, contributing 40% of Tamil Nadu state's, power generation. So as the sun rises on the upper Nilgiris, let us pray for a better tomorrow for the water bodies of the Nilgiris and of our indigenous people all over the country and the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chabra. And it was a really
You were
fascinating
able
talk that you gave. Can you hear me? Yeah, it was a fascinating talk, and more so for us.
yeah,
I'll share a fact with you. Am I audible, sir?
yes, 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 you are.
Yeah. So I was just talking in between that we had the Todas and the Badagas come to our campus over yesterday, and yesterday
Okay.
evening at a
Uh-huh.
campus we had these wonderful songs. They
Oh,
were songs of nature which they have composed, and they were they were sharing those songs with us. So we
okay.
that was the flavor that we have been getting over the past 2 days, and this talk of yours is a culmination in
Wonderful.
that sense, that it gives us a lot more of the stories, and I am sure there must be many more stories which we can delve into. But just
Yes,
broadly, before I move to the next speaker,
yes.
Dr. Chabra, just one quick question: how do you see the shift happening now? Because one of the discussion point that was also raised is the traditional tribal structures and everything are changing now. There's a lot of shift that is happening. Do you see that impacting in the way that interactions with the water bodies and all that has been changing over the past couple of years? And what do you think this whole idea of sacredness, which is very well integrated into communities and all and their connections, when they kind of dissipate and move out, it gets lost? How can that be captured in that sense?
See, basically, it has to be a living thing. So, uh, when all these river systems were dammed, the sacred crossing points disappeared. If you ask some of the younger Todas now, they won't know these sacred crossing points that I spoke about because in their lifetime they haven't seen it. These dams have been there for now for several decades. So they don't even know about these crossing points anymore. So sometimes we have to say, okay, this is Teba Shiva, or the elders have to point them out and things. So the sanctity is lost with that, unfortunately. And so that is one thing. The second thing, of course, their locally sacred waters are still living because they're mentioned in their prayers, and also they use them for the salt ceremonies. They use them for their dairy temple use, for their pregnancy rites, or for their ordination ceremonies, etc. So those are still living, and they have to have water there. And even if there is a hamlet, there are a few hamlets around Ooty town itself. So even those, they have to have those, not only the waters charged right through the driest months, but also all the species they need for all these ceremonies around. It's a challenge, but it is something that has to, if they have to follow all the rites of passage where scores of plants are to be used and water is also an integral part of that, as you saw, then they have to keep all these things somehow living. But the problem is they're not given control. The Todas are not allowed to. Now you see people are understanding that in Yellowstone National Park, they're firing intentionally the grasslands there. So our people authorities say, oh, let's do it. But the indigenous people, when they have been doing this ritual, which is actually a ritual, but it was actually a way of direct ecosystem management. This has been proscribed. You get penalized if you are doing that. And it was a ritual. It was done with the fire sticks, selectively few places. And actually, when you walk around in Nilgiris, you find some of these virgin grasslands which are still left or otherwise. When they don't get fired selectively, there is a problem. And wetlands also. We found that in the wetlands. Because if there is fire happening in those wetlands, the native species come back. Otherwise, what happens? The other, the forbs and other things come and they dominate that. And the wetlands get ruined. So the problem is that we've got to give them some role in management of these systems. Then they will be a much bigger role. So what I want to do is that there should be a bigger role. After all, it's also biodiversity. I was saying the wetlands have been devastated by the reservoirs and other things and tree plantations and all that. The Eriochrysis rangachara, this avul grasses they used to thatch their temples, that is endemic to Nilgiris. We found that out some years back when we sent some flowering spikes to Kew Garden, and we found that it was Eriochrysis rangachara, which is not found anywhere else in the world. And earlier they could just go to a closest wetland and pick it up for their structures, but now they have just an edge of Nilgiris to collect in a few wetlands. So I think they need to be given a role in this, in management of the resources, and that will work both ways.
And one more thing, Dr. Chabra, just quick question. And this is something taking off from what you just mentioned right now, the biodiversity of. So the Nilgiri bioreserve, if you can just give us a snapshot of the kind of the biodiversity the region possesses, and the importance of this credence of these, the integration of water conservation, and is very essential to maintaining this balance.
Yeah, like I mentioned, the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve is one of the most important areas for plant speciation in the Western Ghats. And there are about close to 150 plant species in this small area and mostly found in just a few pockets, which are endemic. So if you go to neighboring hills like, hill ranges like, say, the Palanis or the Anamales and all, they only have very few. Only maybe a dozen plants are endemic. So this is more than 10 times the number of plant species that are endemic. And but what we have found is that these balsams and they're localized to just one or two valleys here and there, and they can easily be on the brink. And they're all hydrology conserving species, and we call them as hygrophytes. Hygrophyte means water loving plants. They love water because there's so much of rainfall. And in fact, we have found even during the driest months, people think in driest months it doesn't rain. There's frost in Ooty, in Nilgiris. But the mist that, the Todas know it very well. They call it otmos. The mist that rises from the cliffs, it comes and it drenches the precipice, drenches all the flora and fauna in that. That mist is very important. That's not even factored in as the precipitation by people who record the thing, but that's a very important part of our landscape. The mist that rises during the frost time when you think it's not raining at all. So all these have to be factored in, and this is a very, very unique place. And I think we can still do something provided we know what we want to do. So Misra ji was mentioning about some of these places, and we have a dozen dams. Maybe we can restore some of these wetlands. We don't need these. As we shift to other forms of generating power, why should we have this tiny Toda area having a dozen dams generating 40% of Tamil Nadu's hydroelectric power requirements, and the rest of it goes to Kerala and Karnataka and other places, and they also use it for other places. This thing. So there is something that needs to be done, and that will be restoring the sanctity of the rivers and the whole link with the Todas, and it will also be bringing back the biodiversity, because these lakes that you see, they look very beautiful and pristine, but they've flooded the biodiversity of these wetlands there. So this is what people need to realize, I think.
Okay, finally, Dr. Chabra, just one quick question. If there's a message that we can, you kind of gave us a very, overview of how connected with nature the Todas live, right? If there are certain things, what will be the primary message that most of us living in the urban areas can take and, kind of look towards, if there was something that, if they could, you could, just wean out and share it with us.
Yeah, I think it's basically the traditional value system. So, when a Toda looks at certain hills, he doesn't. When we look at a hill, it's a landscape feature, right? So there's given a name like Rocky Mountains, but to a Toda, 200 of them, are so sacred that their names are mentioned by the priest every day there. And 34 of them represent the abodes of deities, whose presence is so real that even today, a Toda elder, some of my friends, will not commit the sacrilege of pointing out their location. They're so sacred. Similarly with the water bodies, there were certain taboos and regulations along with these water bodies. Even today, the Dairy Temple stream cannot be touched by a layperson. And that's why he used that bark you saw to purify it. They cannot be touched by a layperson, some of these streams. And some of them I showed you myself, that some of these sacred springs and other things which are used for the temple use, if somebody defiles it, it goes dry. And I've seen this, it's confirmed by Todas themselves that, oh, this has gone dry because it was defiled. Somebody came and, touched it. My daughter touched it. I've seen these kind of things. There are rocks which turn over, they have sacred rocks. That's a different topic by itself. But there are rocks which, turn over in the darkness of the night. I showed you the natural stone steps to the journey to the afterworld. That is a topic by itself. These are all different chapters in my book on the Todas. It's called the Toda Landscape. So these are different. There's one chapter on sacred waters of the Todas, sacred hills of the Todas, journey to afterworld. So all these link up, into one kind of a cosmograph, the sacred. It's called exploration and cultural ecology. So, the subtitle. So I think that is the message. This value system is very important for us. That there's a connect with nature and everything. No, so that in a Toda knows that he's just the custodian. He's only the master nor the owner of his homeland. He knows that, point one. And he knows that he's just one simple link in the complex web of life. He knows that this is my place. Everything what he does, as you noticed, and what a little I mentioned is that whatever at every level, the connection and relation with nature is inseparable, and their lives are circumscribed by nature and not the other way around. Even today, there are several hamlets I've seen, where they may, for instance, they may be on the hamlet pathway, there may be a sacred flat rock, at ground level, which you and I, people who don't know, will just walk on or take your vehicle on, go around it, because it's a sacred thing. It's related to the dream time. So their lives are circumscribed by nature, not the other way around. We control nature to our convenience. It doesn't happen there in a traditional total. So we need to keep that. These value systems are very important for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chabbra. It was a pleasure speaking to you and knowing about the culture of the Todas. As Manoj Misra ji pointed out, stewardship is required for saving our rivers. You mentioned that we have to have that value system, that a lesson that we can learn from the Todas. Thank you so much for your time. And with that, I'd like to bring in
my pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah. So I'll bring in my next speaker today, Dr. Devashish Bhattacharya. He's an ENT surgeon and environmentalist. He's been working on, various environmental issues, with the river Yamuna being his top priority. He has been working as a team with over 50 years with Mr. Brij Khandelwal, who's an eminent environmentalist, And today he's going to talk to us about the fact of, various conservation efforts that are being done by citizens, specifically around the, saving the Yamuna River itself. So with that, a warm welcome to you, Dr. Bhattacharya, please. Can you hear me, sir?
Well, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm novice in this matter. I'm not a specialist or something like that. My request is that if I can talk in Hindi, I would be more comfortable. Will it be okay?
Perfectly fine, Dr. Bhattacharya. Hindi भी चलेगी हमारे एकदम दौड़ेगी.
And are you helping me with my PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, PPT. I'll bring it online.
Yeah. Hello.
हाँ, आप देख पा रहे हैं अभी?
I'm sorry. I got disturbed. Yeah. So today's topic is the first slide. Welcome. Second slide, please. Next. तो आज हम बात करेंगे यमुना की नदी की पौराणिकता, उसकी दुर्दशा और उनके उद्धार पर चर्चा करेंगे। तो यमुना की नदी पौराणिक है, ये हम सभी जानते हैं। यमुना नदी हमारी आराध्य है, हमारी पूज्य है, हम उसकी पूजा करते हैं। सदियों से हम यमुना को एक माँ के रूप में पूजते आए हैं। कई सदियों से पवित्र पावन नदी सभ्यताओं की बसावट के लिए सबसे महत्वपूर्ण कारण रही है। आप देखते होंगे इसीलिए दिल्ली और आगरा जैसे बड़े शहर यमुना किनारे ही बसे हुए हैं। यमुना उत्तराखंड में यमुनोत्री से आगे बंदरपूछ नामक एक स्थान पर ग्लेशियर से उत्पन्न होती है। ये वहां से उत्पन्न होकर उत्तराखंड और उत्तर प्रदेश होते हुए प्रयाग में संगम करती है। इसका कुल जो है लंबाई इसकी 1378 किलोमीटर है। यमुना गंगा की सबसे बड़ी सहायक नदी है। यमुना का पौराणिक और भौगोलिक इतिहास अब हम यमुना नदी की दुर्दशा पर चर्चा करेंगे। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज।
जी
ये यमुना जी का स्वरूप है। ये यमुना स्वयं श्याम वर्णीय है और कछुए पर सवार हो, और ये देहरादून की यमुना है। आप देख सकते हैं ये यमुना बहुत साफ, स्वच्छ और निर्मल बहती दिख रही है। यहाँ पर ऐसा लगता है कि इस पानी को आप आसानी से अपने पीने के लिए इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं। तो अब हम आते हैं इसकी दुर्दशा कहाँ होती है और कैसे होती है उस पर। चर्चा से पहले आपको यह बताना बहुत आवश्यक है कि यमुना का 80% प्रदूषण जो होता है वो दिल्ली में होता है। सबसे बड़ा प्रदूषण करने वाला जो कारक है वो दिल्ली है। दिल्ली से पहले यमुना जो है उसकी दशा दिशा काफी अच्छी है। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। ये यमुना जो आप देख रहे हैं ये बागपत बड़ौत एक स्थान है दिल्ली से लगभग 50-55 किलोमीटर पीछे, जहां यमुना का पानी इतना साफ है कि आप उसको चुल्लू में भर के पानी को पी सकते हैं। एंड माइंडेड ये दिल्ली से मात्र 50-55 किलोमीटर दूर ही है। परेशानी शुरू होती है जब यमुना दिल्ली में एंटर करती है। यमुना जैसे ही वजीराबाद में यमुना का प्रवेश होता है, वजीराबाद एक बांध है, वहां से जैसे ही यमुना प्रवेश करती है दिल्ली में। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। आप देख सकते हैं जैसे ही यमुना ने वजीराबाद पुल में एंट्री की है, प्रीवियस वन प्लीज, जैसे ही एंटर करते हैं उसमें बड़े बड़े नाले बदबूदार झागदार पानी छोड़ने लगते हैं। ये जो झाग देख रहे हैं आप, ये बेसिकली नालों का झाग है जो वजीराबाद पुल पर मिल रहा है, और इसी को कालंदी का रूप काला और सफेद झागदार हो जाता है। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। ये जो अगली स्लाइड है, यहाँ ये धोबी घाट का संचालन हो रहा है यमुना के पास। I'm extremely sorry, ये धोबी घाट का संचालन हो रहा है यमुना के पास। यमुना को दिल्ली में जो प्रदूषण करते हैं वो उसके मुख्य कारण है, एक तो औद्योगिक प्रदूषण, दूसरा सॉरी,
नहीं कोई बात नहीं, निर्विशेष।
एक्चुअली मेरा लैपटॉप काम नहीं कर रहा था, तो ये मुझे दोस्त के आना पड़ा, इसके लिए मैं माफी चाहता हूं। तो यमुना दिल्ली में धोबी घाट, औद्योगिक प्रदूषण, डिटर्जेंट, कपड़े जो धोए जाते हैं उसका डिटर्जेंट, नालों का पानी, यमुना में सीवेज का प्रवाहित होना, ये सब मुख्य कारण है दिल्ली में प्रदूषण के। और यही कारण दिल्ली से लेके इटावा तक बदस्तूर जारी रहते हैं। दिल्ली, फरीदाबाद, बल्लभगढ़, पलवल, आगरा, मथुरा, वृंदावन, इटावा तक यही हालत रहती है। आप आगरा जहां मैं रहता हूं वहां पर आते आते यमुना एक नाला बन चुकी होती है, उसकी स्थिति इतनी खराब होती है। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड। हाँ, ये देखिए, ये आगरा की तस्वीर है। इसकी स्थिति यमुना की इतनी खराब हो चुकी होती है, नाले की तरह बदल चुकी होती है कि आप इसमें पैर रखना भी पसंद नहीं करेंगे। और यहाँ जो आप ये चित्र देख रहे हैं, इसमें ये धोबी घाट का संचालन हो रहा है यमुना में। इस नाले रूपी पानी में यमुना में जो है कपड़े धोए जाते हैं। तो आप सोच सकते हैं कि कपड़े पहनकर कितनी बीमारियां हो सकती हैं किसी को। नाला और सीवेज डायरेक्टली यमुना में गिरता है, औद्योगिक कचरा, और सबसे बड़ा कारण है यमुना में प्रदूषण का आगरा में चमड़ा। आपको मालूम है ना, ये जूते का कारोबार आगरा में बहुत होता है। घर घर में यहाँ जूते की फैक्ट्रियां खुली हुई हैं। उन सब नेक्स्ट स्लाइड। हाँ, ये धोबी घाट है, ये यमुना का धोबी घाट है। नेक्स्ट प्लीज। पिक्चर, ये ताजमहल है और उसके पीछे बहती हुई यमुना, और उस यमुना में आप देख रहे हैं भैंसें नहा रही हैं। तो इनके नहाने से भी और इनके गोबर मूत्र करने से भी बहुत सारा यमुना में पॉल्यूशन होता है, प्रदूषण होता है। और तो और लोग वाग भी, आगरा के लोग या गांव देहात के लोग यमुना किनारे मलमूत्र विसर्जन करते हैं, उससे भी जो है काफी ज्यादा प्रदूषण यमुना को होता है। तो ये तो मुख्य कारण है आगरा दिल्ली में जो है यमुना का प्रदूषण होने का, लेकिन मुख्य कारक दिल्ली ही है, आगरा तो बाद में आता है उसके। तो ये कहने का मतलब ये है कि यमुना की हालत ये हो गई है कि वो एक मृत प्राय है, उसमें जीवन के कोई आसार नहीं है। इसके जीव जंतु जो है, जल के जंतु जो है वो सब खत्म हो चुके हैं। ये वस्तुतः एक कचरा ढोने वाली नाला बन चुकी है। और याद रहे, स्मरण रहे कि ये यमुना हमारी पूजनीय नदी है, हम उसकी पूजा करते हैं। अब उस पूजा पर भी आते हैं, हम उसको मां मानते हैं, देवी कहते हैं, करोड़ों लोगों की आस्थाएं इससे जुड़ी हुई हैं। उत्तराखंड, उत्तर प्रदेश, महाराष्ट्र, गुजरात, पूरे देशवासियों की आस्था जुड़ी हुई है, और उसकी हालत ये है यमुना की। सरकार यमुना के प्रति बिल्कुल भी गंभीर नहीं है। सरकार ना तो गंगा के प्रति गंभीर है, ना यमुना के प्रति गंभीर है, ना नदियों के प्रति गंभीर है। सबसे बड़ी समस्या यह है कि पूरे देश भर में नदियां इसी प्रकार से प्रदूषित होती रहती हैं, कारण चाहे कुछ भी हो, लेकिन गवर्नमेंट लग नहीं रहा कि इसके प्रति कोई उनकी सीरियसनेस है। अब आप सभी को पता है कि धरती पर 3 से 4% जो पानी का हिस्सा है वही पेयजल के लिए उपयुक्त है, बाकी का पानी हम पी नहीं सकते हैं। और ये पानी तो जो हम आपको दिखाते आ रहे हैं, दिल्ली से लेकर आगरा तक यमुना का पानी पीना तो छोड़िए, इसमें आप पैर भी नहीं रख सकते हैं। और आने वाले समय में जिस तरह से ग्लेशियर पिघलते जा रहे हैं और नदियों का स्वरूप सिकुड़ता जा रहा है, तो ये पानी बिल्कुल नहीं बचेगा। ये भी पानी हमको नसीब नहीं होगा, तो सोचिए आगे का भविष्य कैसा है। हाँ, नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। हमने यमुना के लिए कई वर्षों से प्रयास किया है, पिछले 15 वर्षों से तो मैं ही यमुना के लिए जुड़ा हुआ हूँ। हम लगातार प्रयास कर रहे हैं लोगों में जागरूकता लाने के लिए, और इसी सिलसिले में हमने 2015 में आगरा में यमुना नदी के किनारे यमुना आरती का शुभारंभ किया था, जो रोज निरंतर आज भी हो रही, पिछले 7.5 साल से आरती का जारी है होना। हम 7.5 वर्षों से लोगों को आरती स्थल पर बुलाते हैं। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। उनको आरती से जोड़ते हैं, उनको एक तरह से जो है श्रद्धा का भाव उनके अंदर उत्पन्न करते हैं, और उससे जो है वो प्रण लेते हैं कि हम यमुना को आगे चल के मैली नहीं करेंगे। ये हमारी पूजनीय नदी है, आराध्य है, हम उसको कभी मैली नहीं करेंगे। नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। देखिए धीरे धीरे लोग जुड़ते चले गए और इसकी संख्या काफी हो गई है। आज आरती में 100, 125, 150 लोग आराम से जुड़ जाते हैं, और इस तरह से जागरूकता शहर में यमुना के प्रति फैलती जा रही है। और जो लोग आरती से जुड़ते हैं वो लोग यमुना में कोई मैला गंदगी नहीं करते, वो लोग हमेशा जो है यमुना को साफ करने के बारे में सोचते हैं, समय समय पर सफाई अभियान चलाते हैं और यमुना को साफ रखने में अपना योगदान देते हैं। कुछ छोटा मोटा योगदान हमारा भी रहा है यमुना को यमुना के प्रति जागरूकता उत्पन्न करने में, तो मैं दो लाइन में उसको मेंशन कर देता हूं। ये इसके बाद नेक्स्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। देखिए जैसे ये हमने यमुना के लिए मार्च का आयोजन किया था, तो हम करीब करीब 5 किलोमीटर का पैदल यात्रा हमने आयोजित की थी, और इसके साथ साथ हम बच्चों को भी प्रेरित किया था कि हमारे साथ यात्रा में चले। तो कई स्कूलों के बच्चे भी हमारे साथ चले थे, और उसी साल 2015 में ही ये यात्रा का आयोजन किया गया था, और ये बड़ी खबर बनी थी। काफी लोगों ने इसको गंभीरता से लिया, लेकिन अभी तक कुछ होता प्रतीत नहीं हो रहा है। नेक्स्ट प्लीज। हाँ, ये मैंने मुख्यमंत्री को व्यक्तिगत रूप से ज्ञापन दिया था जब 2017 में मुख्यमंत्री आगरा आए थे। उसका जवाब भी मुझे मिला कि यमुना में गिरने वाले नालों को टैप किया जाएगा, उसके लिए इतना पैसा रिलीज होगा, लेकिन वही वादे ही हैं, वादों का क्या, कुछ होता तो है नहीं है। पैसा आया, पता नहीं कहाँ चला गया, और वो यमुना मैली की मैली रह गई। नेक्स्ट प्लीज। ये तत्कालीन मंत्री थी रीता बहुगुणा जोशी जी, हमने उनको भी ज्ञापन दिया था, और लेकिन वही ज्ञापन देते हैं, ले लेते हैं, सुन लेते हैं बात को हमारी, हाँ हाँ कर देते हैं, लेकिन नेताओं की गंभीरता यमुना नदी के प्रति दिखाई नहीं देती बिल्कुल भी। नेक्स्ट प्लीज। ये मैंने जन सुनवाई में शिकायत की थी, तो वहां से भी जवाब आया कि हम कार्रवाई कर रहे हैं, यमुना को प्रदूषण मुक्त कर देंगे, लेकिन वही ढाक के तीन बात, होता जाता कुछ नहीं है। तो इस तरह से कई सारी स्लाइड्स मैंने आपको दिखाई जो हम कर रहे हैं। जैसे कभी कभी पतंग उत्सव का आयोजन करते हैं यमुना किनारे मकर संक्रांति पर, कभी हम गंगा दशहरा पर रेत में स्नान का आयोजन करते हैं, जिससे कि जो है लोगों को लगे कि भाई पानी नहीं है तो रज में ही, ब्रज की रज में ही नहा लो, उसमें ही आनंद आ जाएगा, उसी में जो है हमको भक्ति का भाव मिल जाएगा। और कभी झुंझुना बजाते हैं, कभी कुछ करते हैं, लेकिन करने के बाद भी वस्तुतः यमुना नदी की स्थिति कोई अच्छी है नहीं, और ये इसकी आगे चल के भी मुझे लग नहीं रहा कि ये कोई बहुत अच्छी स्थिति में होगा। बस अंत में नेक्स्ट प्लीज, नेक्स्ट प्लीज। कैन वी मूव टू द लास्ट स्लाइड प्लीज। लास्ट वन, या अंत में जो मुझे सुन रहे हैं उनमें से कई लोग युवा होंगे, मैं उनसे निवेदन करना चाहता हूं कि आप लोगों के अंदर बहुत क्षमता है, आप बहुत कुछ कर सकते हैं। यदि आज आप ठान लें हमारी नदियां स्वच्छ निर्मल साफ होंगी, तो आप अवश्य ऐसा कर सकेंगे। इसलिए आप सभी से निवेदन है कि आप प्रण करें कि अपने शहर में जो भी नदी है, नदी को ना मैला करेंगे, ना किसी को मैला करने देंगे। मुझे पूर्ण विश्वास है कि इस प्रण के अच्छे परिणाम निकलेंगे। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद।
देवाशीष जी, अब हमारे पास टाइम की बहुत कमी है, मगर फिर भी मेरे पास एक दो प्रश्न आपके लिए ज़रूर मेरे उसमें हैं, तो मैं आपसे पूछना चाहूँगा कि हमने अक्सर देखा है कि जब हम पवित्रता या उससे हम किसी को भी जोड़ते हैं, उसका सीधा संबंध किसी तरीके से कंजर्वेशन में नहीं हो पाता। और ये बात सबसे पूरक इससे है कि आप गंगा को ही देख लीजिए, गंगा तो हमारी सबसे पवित्र मैया है, रही हैं, और हर जगह उनका जिस तरीके से, मगर उनकी दुर्दशा भी उतनी ही अति से होती है जितनी उनकी पूजा होती है। तो ये आरती और एक कॉन्शियसनेस का ये संबंध आप किस तरीके से निकालने का कोशिश कर रहे हैं, और इसका क्या किस तरीके से आपको लगता है ये आगे जाए?
देखिए, हमारे यहाँ जो आरती आता है, आरती में जो आता है, जो आरती में शामिल होता है, हम उससे ये प्रण तो लेते ही हैं कि भाई आप यहाँ तक आ गए हैं, यमुना के नदी तक, तट तक, तो आप यमुना के नदी के तट पे आकर ये प्रण लें कि आप स्वयं यमुना को गंदा ना करेंगे। पर्पस हमारा आरती से जोड़ने का ये है कि शहर के लोग यमुना नामक एक पवित्र पावन एक पूज्य और पुरातन नदी जो बहती थी शहर में, उसको ही भूल गए थे। लोगों ने इसको यमुना की तरफ झांकना बंद कर दिया था, लोग देखने तक नहीं आते थे कि नदी में हो क्या रहा है। तो हमने एक तरह से इस आरती के आयोजन से लोगों को जोड़ के यमुना के साथ परिचय कराना शुरू किया कि भाई आपके शहर में एक बहुत प्राचीन और बहुत ही पूजनीय नदी बहती थी, उसका क्या हाल है, नाला बन गया है, जरा देख तो जाओ। आप आवाज उठाओ, हम भी आवाज उठाएं, सब लोग मिलकर आवाज उठाएंगे तो वो आवाज कहीं ना कहीं जाकर असर तो करेगी। तो यही हमारा पर्पस था आरती से जोड़ना। अच्छा, एक चीज और, जैसे आप कह रहे हैं ना कि आरती और पूजा का जितना हम पूजा करते हैं जिस चीज की, वही मैली हो जाती है ज्यादा, जैसे गंगा मैली हो गई। तो आप सही कहते हैं, चंबल नदी में किसी भी देवी देवता की पूजा नहीं होती है। एंड आई एम टेलिंग यू, चंबल नदी इज द बेस्ट रिवर, क्लीनेस्ट रिवर and has the best of diversity, biodiversity. चंबल के नदी में मगरमच्छ, घड़ियाल, बर्ड्स और आपके रेप्टाइल्स, कछुए वगैरह इतने अधिक हैं कि आप डॉल्फिन सबसे ज्यादा चंबल में है, पूरे देश भर में और कहीं डॉल्फिन ही नहीं मिलती हैं। तो आप सही कह रहे हैं, पूजा का जिसको हम पूजा करते हैं हम उसी को और ज्यादा महंगा करते हैं। हमारी पूजा की ये पद्धति हो गई कि हम भगवान को ही गंदा कर देते हैं।
जी, तो दूसरी बात एक आती है अभी, जैसे मनोज मिश्रा जी की जो एक उन्होंने अभी थोड़ी देर पहले उन्होंने हमारे साथ जुड़े थे और उन्होंने बात की थी, तो उन्होंने एक यमुना के ऊपर ही बात की थी। उन्होंने बहुत स्पेसिफिक एग्जांपल दिया था कि यमुना किस तरीके से, जैसे आपने भी दिखाया, दर्शाया कि दिल्ली में आने से के पहले कैसी साफ सुथरी रहती है और दिल्ली के बाद जो उसके अंदर एक परिवर्तन होता है एक बुरे के लिए। तो इसी तरीके से जिस तरीके से वो बाद में चंबल नदी के साथ जब मिलती है तो वापस से किस तरीके से वो वापस से एक वेग और उसके अंदर सुधार आ जाता है। तो ये जो पूरी जो समस्या है वो तो दिल्ली और दिल्ली वासियों इन जैसे शहरों की है, राइट? तो ये आप लोकली इसको किस तरीके से सॉल्व लगता है ये हो सकता है?
ये प्रॉब्लम यमुना में सिर्फ एक 250 और 300 किलोमीटर का पैच है, उसमें है। दिल्ली टू इटावा में चंबल मिल जाती है, और इटावा के आगे आप थोड़ा सा जाएंगे तो वो हमीरपुर के आगे वहां पर केन बेतवा नदी भी मिल जाती है वहां पे। तो वो चंबल, केन, बेतवा और जो आगे जो नदियां पचनदा वगैरह मिलती जाती हैं, तो प्रयाग तक पहुंचते पहुंचते पानी की क्वालिटी है। तो द प्रॉब्लम एग्जिस्ट बिटवीन दिल्ली एंड इटावा, एंड उसमें जितने भी शहर बसे हुए हैं, सभ्यताएं बसी हुई थी जो पुराने जमाने से, उन्होंने नदी को दे हैव टेकन इट फॉर ग्रांटेड कि इट इज अ सीवेज कैनाल, इसमें कूड़ा डाल दो। तो नाउ प्रैक्टिकली देखा जाए तो नदी अब पूजनीय नहीं है, अब वो सीवेज कैनाल है, उसमें कचरा डाल दो अपना। और हद तो तब है जब हमारा सीवेज भी उस नदी में मिल रहा है और हम ही उसी पानी को पी रहे हैं। कितना ट्रीट हो जाता है वो सीवेज, मुझे समझा दीजिए आप। तो द प्रॉब्लम लाइज बिटवीन दिल्ली एंड इटावा, एंड इट हैज टू बी एड्रेस्ड ओनली इन दैट पैच। अगर इतने से एरिया को एड्रेस कर लिया जाए, यहां पर साबरमती जैसा एक रिवर फ्रंट बने, उसके बगल में नाले जितने भी गिर रहे हैं उनको एक कॉमन नाले में टैप करके एसटीपी तक पहुंचाया जाए, और वो पानी को एसटीपी से ट्रीट करके अगर यमुना में डाला जाए, तो ये प्रॉब्लम यमुना की काफी हद तक सॉल्व हो सकती है। लेकिन गवर्नमेंट का इस तरफ कोई ध्यान है नहीं अभी तक।
और दूसरी बात ये भी जो एक वो सामने आई है कि जो पानी का जो डाइवर्जन होता है ईस्टर्न यमुना कैनाल और उसके थ्रू एक वास्ट मेजॉरिटी ऑफ पानी तो शायद वही मनोज मिश्रा जी ने भी बोला और अभी डॉक्टर छाबरा ने भी यही पॉइंट रेज की कि नदी का खुद का भी एक उनका राइट है टू फ्लो। तो आप इस नोट पे आप क्या कहना चाहेंगे? बस
नहीं, तो हम तो शुरू से विरोध कर रहे हैं कि नदी पर कोई बांध होना ही नहीं चाहिए, और इसका जो कैनाल सिस्टम है इसका वाटर डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन प्रॉपर होना चाहिए। अब प्रॉब्लम ये है कि यूपी को उसका शेयर ऑफ वाटर नहीं मिलता, हरियाणा रोक लेता है पूरा पानी, और बाकी जो बचा हुआ पानी है वो दिल्ली रोक लेता है, और दिल्ली सीवेज छोड़ के आगरा को भेज देता है। तो हमारे आगरा की हालत ये होती है कि हम सीवेज पी रहे हैं, पानी नहीं पी रहे हैं। तो ये नदी का जो इकोसिस्टम है वो नदी का राइट है। आप नदी में बांध बना के उसके इकोसिस्टम को डिस्टर्ब नहीं कर सकते। मेरा तो ये कहना है कि इंस्टेड ऑफ हैविंग ह्यूज डैम्स, वी शुड हैव स्मॉल चेक डैम्स, जिससे द फ्लो ऑफ वाटर जो है वो कंटिन्यूअस रहे, फ्लो ऑफ वाटर डिस्टर्ब नहीं हो, जिससे नदी का इकोसिस्टम हमेशा मेंटेन रहना है।
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया देवश्री जी। हम हमारा टाइम वो हो गया है।
धन्यवाद, आपने मुझे बोलने का मौका दिया।
दर्शकों और
नहीं, बहुत दर्शकों का बहुत आभारी हूं कि आपने मुझे सुना धैर्य से।
नहीं, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। तो broadly, if we were to summarize the talk today, one of couple of messages that kind of stand out, like the first one, that Manoj Mishra ji spoke about, the rivers are us and we are the rivers. So we have to not take, deal with them as externalities. We have to deal with them as something which are very much part of our ethos and culture, and very much a part of our life itself. Secondly, if we were to, the value system that Todas bring to play, the way that, a whole community is very consciously living in a life, leading a life which has been in consonance for quite many centuries. There are a lot of lessons that we can learn. We don't necessarily need to, refer to case studies which come from abroad or, from elsewhere, to kind of guide us on how we should be dealing with waters. And finally, this is a citizen action which was taken by, Dr. Devashish Bhattacharya, talking about, various aspects of bringing little bit of connection between people. We have been talking about this through the talk today. How can people connect to these rivers? And I think there are numerous things that need to be done. Aarti could be one factor. There could be plenty of things, walks, organizing that thing, stewardship, custodianship. There are plenty of messages. Through this festival, at Rivers of Life, we have been trying to make that connection with rivers, with that forgotten link that has been there. We are kind of, that link has been disconnected for quite some time. Hopefully, through these discussions and deliberation, a lot many festivals like Rivers of Life, we will be making a small, change in that perspective. So on that note, I'd like to thank everyone. Thank you, Dr. Devashish, aap idhar hi hain, namaskar.
Thank you so much.
And thanks to all our participants, Manoj Mishra, Tarun, Chabbra. And with that, hope to see you very soon, and with lots of discussion on rivers, conservation, and water. Thank you so much.